This is the Fitness Wisdom Podcast. Hello everyone, welcome back to another exciting episode. Today I'm going to be interviewing Brooke McPoyle. She's a true expert on everything fascial health and breath work, and she's the founder of Musical Breathwork. So this is going to be a mind-blowing conversation. You need to stay tuned for this one.
I'm catching you during your red light therapy time, I see.
No, it's just my red light bulbs in the house. Everything's red, because it's post sunset, so I'm trying to protect my melatonin while I do this.
That's beautiful. Well, thanks for joining us. It's actually the morning time here. It's only 10 a.m. for me right now.
Yeah, yeah, it looks great. Are you sitting outside?
This is just my screen. I'm actually in my office. I just installed my slider like 2 weeks ago, and it felt like an enormous upgrade for my circadian rhythm. Like I have so much more ambient light in here now. So this is just my little
Yeah,
garden, and my
that's so
boyfriend and
nice.
I are about to grow a whole bunch of new mushrooms out here, and we're so
Oh,
excited to have like
nice.
the mushroom garden like so close to the house where we can kind of witness all the changes. It's going to be exciting.
And especially if you can set up like a time lapse video or something like that and just see it all happening in these micro moments that for us we don't see. We seem to distort times as human beings. We think that time is on this 24-hour cycle when in reality it's just the present, right? And every moment is the present, and again and again and again, over and over, and it's basically just manifesting itself.
You know, Andres, time to me is starting to change a little bit as we get into the brain waves, right? Like you're someone who works with the body, you're working with frequencies. Both of us are starting to like get into neurology a little bit more and how the electricity in the body's moving. And I keep having this reoccurring thought that when we are in a high anxiety brainwave state, right? Which I still, even though I coach people to live in low anxiety, I still experience high anxiety in moments. And like
I think we
holidays
all
is a,
do. Yeah.
yeah. And it's when there's this sense of pressure in our mind to make rapid decisions or rapid choices when I feel like time compresses.
Mm,
And I'm often trying to remind myself to slow back into that 4 breath a minute state because I feel like when
mm,
I'm breathing, one breath for every 15 seconds, I have more room in between my thoughts.
mm,
And it
yeah.
makes me feel like I have this ability to create more space in my response time with people. And I wonder how malleable time really is when we start to talk about things like gamma brain waves and start to pop into these other transcendental states. Like our
Mm,
brain has the ability to just continue to fold on top of itself to
mhm,
make new connections. And as I meditate more and as I learn more, I just am humbled by, wow, what is time? And how slow can
mm,
we truly experience it if
mm.
we're really present within the fullness of our body and the fullness of our electricity, you know?
Absolutely. And if we're stuck on this man-made 24-hour cycle that we believe that exists, I feel like that makes us age so much faster. When in reality, time, if we believe that it doesn't exist and we just go by the sun and the darkness cycles, the day and light cycles, we may just thrive and live so much longer because, okay, yeah, there may be like a 24-hour rhythm, but in reality, does the rhythm or does the amount of time change in wintertime? I've thought this to myself many, many times. For example, in the summer, when you feel like, okay, it's got this many hours of light and this many hours of darkness. But then in the winter time, it's got so many more hours of darkness and so many less hours of light. And I'm just thinking that actually when we're sleeping, are we like time traveling or, what's going on?
I do think that
Oh,
our
but
consciousness goes somewhere when we
yeah,
sleep. I like a battery, like, you know, how we have to charge our phones, you know? I feel
yes,
like we get plugged into our main source.
yes,
We and all the systems wash each other while we go like and visit home and then we come
yes,
back.
yeah, absolutely. Maybe we can get into that a little bit. So maybe we can start off with the breath work then, since you talked about brain waves. I told everybody that you're an expert on breath work and the fascial system, right? And so maybe you can talk a little bit about your background and how you got into this work that you're doing today.
The universe is lovely to me. I actually had the opportunity to start learning breath at a very young age. When I was 12, I was part of the public school system in here in South Florida, and there was a choir at my public school. So when I was sixth grade, and so I was like 11, I was learning how to sing choir, and I had the best choir instructor. His name was Mr. Gonzalez, and he taught us kids how to diaphragmic breathe. And the thing about learning to use the breath for singing is there is a very uh, specific shape in which you breathe because you're controlling the air pressure. So you're not just inhaling and exhaling and counting rhythms, right? You are inhaling and you are moving the air through your body in a way that gives you extraordinary control over how the air is moving out of you. So there's two things that you learn when you're a singer, and that's how to really expand your lung capacity so that you can create as much space and opening, and then you learn how to push the exhale down. So there's two muscles that are involved in breathing. The first one is the diaphragm, and that's the muscle underneath the lungs. It's that U-shaped muscle, and most people are using the diaphragm like this. And what I show people how to do is to use the diaphragm like this. So bringing it all the way down and out.
Yeah.
And belly dancers to me are like the prime example of someone who's learned how to use the diaphragm amongst all three ridges. So the diaphragm is a very weird muscle compared to all of the other, like, if you flex your bicep and then you let it go. There's only like two ways that you can move it. And the diaphragm has three ridges that lets us push on our sternum, push on our lumbar, and then push out to the outsides. And then we have another group of muscles, and those are called the intercostals. Fancy way for people who don't know what the intercostals are. Inter means between, and costal means rib. And we have three layers. They're very thin muscles. So they're hard to strength train. But what we can do is teach them how to be very flexible, and we can start to teach control. So if you have this experience with me right now, I want you to close your mouth, lift the tongue on the back third of your soft palate. So we're just gonna like lift the tongue and kind of pull down on the back of the soft palate so that we're opening the nasal glands. And then take a big nose inhale, and I want you to fill your belly up. When the belly's full, hold the air in your belly. I want you to inhale more and fill your back. Okay, keep the air there. Inhale more and fill your sides. Keep the air there. Fill up your chest now. So this is what I call maximum capacity. And you may feel some tightness, so don't let it out yet. Inhale some more, and I want you to open your body. Just kind of experience one side. Yep. Then take another big breath. Try to even shove more air. Open the other side, and you'll notice there's some natural asymmetry. Now we're going to exhale with control. Empty your chest, keep the belly out. Empty your back, keep the belly out. Empty the sides, keep the belly out. At the very end, release the belly. Take a recovery breath. So that's maximum capacity. And what I love to train people to do is to teach them how to double their lung capacity.
Mm.
What most people don't realize is that the average untrained lungs, like the lungs are just sponges, they're not muscles. And there's a lot of devices out there that are training people how to like mouth breathe with like intense suction.
Mm.
And I don't buy into whatever that's teaching
Mm.
people. And I know some
Me
people have
neither.
yeah, I know
I
some
don't like
people have
mouth breathing.
gotten no. It kind of tones and shapes the face differently.
Yeah,
I'm a big the nose is meant for breathing, the mouth is meant for
yes,
eating.
exactly.
That's the first thing I teach in my course, and it really helps when people see the cross section of the face because once we realize how large the nasal glands are, that they go all the way up to here and out to here, we can start to really clean. And so my mighty breath is my three favorite breathing exercises that are put together in like a little 10-minute sequence. So I teach people all of the science, all of the tips, how to work with tension in the body, but then it's like just log in and do this 10-minute little sequence. And over the course of 6 weeks, what we do is we metrically train. So we test your breath hold rate. That gives us an idea. So if somebody can only hold their breath for 30 seconds, they're at like less than 3 liters of cubic space in their lungs. So we want to clean out their lung tissue and we want to start making it bigger. If somebody has like a 90-second breath hold, they're around 7 cubic liters. Now, the world record holders are at 22 cubic liters. And the reason for that kind of gap is because of how our lung tissue is shaped.
Mm,
And for me, any athlete, like if you want an edge on all of your competition, double your breath, double your
yeah.
lung capacity because your endurance changes, your recovery
Mm,
changes, your rest changes.
mm,
But those are all to me like fun side effects of it because when we start to shape the exhale, right, when we start to get really good at that shape, our diaphragm is naturally starting to hold this like push down on the exhale. So level one with my breath training, it's all about we clean the lungs, we double your capacity, we establish a shape. Once that's natural, level two, we can add pelvic floor. And once the pelvic floor is started to add, the body becomes a compression and expansion mechanism. And this to me is like like the real fun stuff is when we start to train the body for compression and expansion, for contraction and expansion, with the breath, our systems start to pump optimally all the time. So now the fascia is flowing. Now there's no stagnation in the tissues. Um, there's no circulation issues. The nervous system is starting to fire. The cerebral spinal fluid is starting to be pumped more regularly and touching everything. Then when the pelvic floor can be added and we don't have to think about it when it becomes like an unconscious addition, we can add the toes. And when we add the toes, we can start to stand. And this is when it starts to look a lot more like Tai Chi because breath and movement are meant to be married together. They are really, as a golfer, so I played D1 golf and I've read, at least 50 books on the sports psychology of golf. And I've, had an epic amount of coaches. And it was crazy to me how few of them discussed the breath.
mm,
There was
yeah.
one book out of all of the books I've ever read. It's
Yeah.
called Quantum Golf, and it was written by a Japanese guy. And
Sounds
he
like an
was
epic
obsessed.
book.
Oh, it was, I've read it like four times. If even if you don't play golf, he
Yeah.
used the physics of superfluid molecules to describe the rhythm that you can achieve when you pair the golf swing with the breath, the effortlessness of it.
Mm,
And I feel like, in take any sport, any athletic sport,
mm,
we're looking for effortlessness. Like that's what makes a master at something a master.
mm,
And I'm training with this professional opera singer right now, Hillary Ginther. And as much as I understand about the breath, she's still showing me the nuances of being able to explore the sh- like funneling the head, the air pressure into the head ever so slightly so that's electrical. And when I'm doing it right, it literally feels like my molars are electricity.
mm,
Like the
mm,
sound is roping out of my body in this like super intense way. And I, as much as I can experience it, bringing that experience to others to me is like a real gift because
mm,
having a mighty breath, it changes everything that we do as an athlete, as a singer,
mm.
as a thinker.
Oh
So
yeah, absolutely.
yeah,
I'm
I said a
so
lot.
surprised. I know I'm so surprised that they didn't teach you, about the breathing in golf because if you think about it, the sports that require breath the most are the sports that require the most or are the most still. Like if you do something like hunting or archery or golf or something like this, you require like
Mm,
so much focus and concentration. And if you want your nervous system to be able to be in a state where you are relaxed and you're not twitching and you're not nervous. You need to be able to calm yourself down. And one way to be able to access our nervous system is through our breath. And that's why I think that the breathing is super, super important beyond the performance aspect that it gives you, the ability to utilize more oxygen when you are breathing correctly and to regulate your nervous system state. You're also able to regulate your brain waves. So then you're able to be more in that right frame of mind, right? Where you can like really focus on the task at hand. Whereas if you're just breathing incoherently and you have a rapid heart rate, it's going to really throw your concentration off in what you're doing.
our heart, so our breath, right, is connected to our heart rate at the bottom of our brainstem, right, in the medulla oblongata, controls both the breath rate and the heart rate. And if anybody's listening that struggles with anxiety, or, you pop into states of stress, my main trigger switch, like for all my like for kids that I teach, is humming, because when we
Mhm.
hum, we are naturally elongating our exhale and we're stimulating those parasympathetics. And what I tell the adults to do is try to breathe at less than 4 breaths a minute. And if you can maintain that for 4 minutes, you will have pulled your body into a way more relaxed state of rest. And it's like, if we could start talking about that frequency conversation, it's like when we're high stress, all we're talking
Mhm.
about is the brain is in a high frequency state. And
Mhm.
when that is maintained for a long period of time, the whole nervous system starts to come into this like stressful state, and then we don't heal from there. So anytime
Mhm.
we notice, like, oh no, it's starting to happen, the phone is ringing, the kids are going, I don't have kids, but I'm just saying, my friends who do, it's like, like you can see them get
Yes.
befuddled in their head. And it's
Uh-huh.
like, just come back in that 4 breaths a minute. I often tell friends, like, put on music. Like, even just putting on nature sounds in the back, there's this sense of ease that you can create in a business meeting or in your household, where,
Mm.
there's just little sounds of birds and little things that can keep people's energy a little more calm by
Mhm.
itself.
Yeah, so it's like the atmosphere that you're creating, or the environment, the external and the internal environment that you're creating with the sound, and also the type of light you're exposed to, but also the way that you breathe is also changing, I guess, your pH, inside of your system. Everything is shifting the way that we are, the rate of which we are breathing, and also like how deep we are breathing, right? Or whether that we are aware or unaware of how we are breathing is altering our state of our being. And I think this is super important for people to understand, because it makes you realize how much power we hold to be able to alter our consciousness, our state of being, and how we treat others and how we treat ourselves. Because if we don't treat ourselves well, we can't expect to be good to others, right? Because if you're not feeling good, it's way more difficult to be better to somebody else. But when you're feeling good, it's so much easier to give love and joy, to everyone around you. So breathing coherently, and having that heart brain coherence, and really tuning into your environment and trying to become one, then I feel that's like a game changer for people.
Andreas, I'm gonna just like reflect for a moment. Like, it's holiday season, and I got to watch how a lot of the women in my life operate, with, making dinner and, putting things out. And the standard person is breathing 15 to 25 breaths a minute. And when they're resting. So as soon as they get up off the couch, a lot of people are already in an elevated breath rate of more than 30 breaths a minute. So that's more than
That's wild.
it's almost,
That's
yes.
that's really fun.
So that's going to trigger the heart rate to go up, and then that's going to trigger the brain waves to go up.
Yeah.
So here I am watching my family members, just put out a spread and, put things down and talk to others. And I'm watching as the night goes on, breath rates elevate, and then I watch them sit and they relax. And it's like, wow, to move at like a master, right? To move in a state of effortlessness, to me, is about, wow, if we could do the same thing, but imagine the breath rate being at 4 breaths a minute. How much more like a kung fu person we would interact by just taking the ham out of the oven. If we're
Mm,
aware of our breath,
mm,
everything starts to become almost like an
yeah,
art move or an
yes,
athletic posture.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It makes you really much more aware about everything that you're doing in your life. It makes you more um, observing the environment rather than reacting to the environment, right? If you're breathing fast, you're more likely to be reactive to your environment. But when you're breathing slow, you're able to observe. Like, so if someone, cuts you off in traffic, or someone annoys you or something, you're more likely to respond aggressively if you're in that heightened nervous system state, right? Depends what kind of person you are as well, and also
Mm-hmm.
how much stuff undealt with you have stored inside. But other than that, like, the breath can massively influence as well your state of how you respond to a situation. And that's why, I've been doing a bit of a coffee detox lately, and I feel like that has been incredible for me, because I've been drinking coffee for many years, straight. And now that I've been not drinking coffee for like 40 days or more, I feel like my heart rate is just so much lower, and like my nervous system stays so much easier to regulate, so I don't get into that state of fight and flight so easily. And
Nice.
that just tells me something, that my lifestyle in general is quite stressful. So
Mm,
adding coffee on top of that just adds like fuel to the flame, you know. But of course, if I just drink it from time to time when I'm calm, I feel like it can be an incredible tool for focus and performance enhancement. But if I do drink it all the time out of habit, I feel like it's taking more away from me rather than give it to me. Would you agree
yeah.
with that with caffeine?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I love coffee too, and it's a great vasodilator, so it automatically opens our
Mm,
brain up.
mm,
I've been replacing my coffee with cacao and bee pollen and
mm,
honey,
mm.
and I gotta tell you, it's really nice to have a warm beverage that kind of like smells good and feels good in
Yeah,
the morning.
yeah.
But my stomach for sure appreciates the no acid. Um, in
Mm,
Eastern medicine, I love to read textbooks from all over the world
mhm,
because that's our opportunity in the information system age we get to live in. And in Eastern medicine, they always say that coffee, like any caffeine, any stimulant, is going to
mm,
steal our shen for the future. So
mm,
in Eastern medicine, there's this philosophy that we have so much life force that we are
mhm.
given as a gift for life, and we can either build that or we can like take from it. And caffeine to them, any of the enes, the caffeines, the nicotines, the the
Yeah, the
I
ease.
N E's, yeah, like we should avoid those because they tax the shen.
Okay,
But
that's
life is,
really cool.
yeah, life is balance. I really feel like everything in moderation can be a medicine. Anything
Yes,
overdone can
yes,
be a toxin.
yes,
So, I love to wake up and have a couple glasses of water and kind of be awake for a couple hours, then enjoy a cup of coffee as like a
yes.
little bit of an enhancement. Have you
Mhm.
tried the new mushroom coffees that they have out there?
Oh, I've tried lots of mushroom coffees over time. Yeah, I just kind of feel that, when I'm drinking something, I feel that I need something with more full body, and if I have it, I normally have it with like heavy cream. So if I have my coffee, I'm gonna have heavy cream in it, and it's gonna be like really fatty because it really brings out the flavor of the coffee. But
Yeah.
I don't like to dilute things, with milk, because I find that milk is so much percentage in
Yeah.
water, so it just makes it, more, watery. So but yeah, I have tried the mushrooms, and those ones just don't give me the same effect that I'm looking for with, like, I mean, I do feel something with cordyceps, for example, and lion's mane, but not with all the mushrooms.
Okay. You might enjoy the I do bee pollen, cacao, and honey.
Uh,
And it's a
uh,
full-bodied flavor. It makes my tummy feel like good. You might
Yeah,
enjoy it.
I have that every evening normally. I normally have a
Oh,
cacao
okay.
drink in the evening. Yeah, because
Nice.
it feels like super relaxing. It has a little bit of
Mm,
magnesium in there. I don't know how bioavailable it is. I take extra magnesium anyway in supplementation form, but it's nice to have that cacao. I just always feel it relaxes my nervous system, so it feels super nice.
nice.
But tell me about these four breaths. For example, how would you structure it? Is it how long is the inhale? How long is the exhale? Do you
Okay.
hold in between of the breaths? For example, when you get to the end of the exhale, is there a pause, or how does the structure look like?
So the beautiful thing about the breath is it can look a thousand different ways, but
That's
the
true.
way that I would coach people down from a state of anxiety is 4 breaths a minute ends up being around a 7-second inhale and an 8-second exhale. And so it's just moving through the shape. So when I normally teach people the breath, they can't feel all four shapes of the lung. They can't feel into the lungs as a front down, a back down, a side, and they usually feel just lower and upper. So the way that I would explain it to a total beginner is let's go ahead and slow motion swallow again, lift that tongue into the top of the soft palate. And then we're gonna inhale and fill the belly. Right. And as the belly comes out, keep the air there. Inhale more, fill the back, sides, and chest. So this is 4 parts. So you might just feel the belly and then an upper part kind of inflate. And then we're right about 7 seconds. We're going to exhale with control. Keep the belly out, but empty the chest. So empty the top part of the lung field and then empty the lower. right? We don't have any lung tissue in our belly. So when I'm saying breathe into the belly, all I'm cueing is to push that diaphragm
Yeah.
down. And then it's completing the exhale fully. So like I'm still only operating on one breath, even though I've been talking.
Hmm.
And then it's inhaling again. So
Mm,
when people establish a shape, right? When you learn how to breathe into your belly, into that lower section, and then into the upper
mhm,
section, and you
mhm,
take your time, like trying
mhm,
to actually experience where the air is unfolding,
mm,
right? And then when you exhale, you empty that chest and then you empty the belly. As people train, and we can show them, to me, seeing the muscles, being presented with this is what your lungs look like. This is how the lung tissue is smashed against your rib cage. Most people don't know when they take a body apart and they take the lungs out of the body, the lungs have indents where the ribs were. So it's
really?
all about, yeah, it's
Wow,
literally the
that's
lungs are
cool.
just smashed into our body.
Wow, wow.
And as we learn to create flexibility in the intercostals and
Mhm,
open the fascia, and we
mhm,
have to, we work together, like we stretch and then we use the breath to create space within the body.
mm,
So when we train, we actually have to be very aware of where the tension in the body is arising. Most
mhm,
people don't realize the brain wants to keep us out of pain. So it has
mhm,
devised a million different ways to hide pain from ourselves. And when we go through certain exercises, we experience pain or tension, right? And most people are like, oh, that's painful or that tense. So like they kind of block or they numb that area of their
mhm,
body.
mhm,
And as like the way that I coach is I teach them how to unlock that tension. So don't ignore the tension. The tension is showing you where your tissues are smashed together and there's
mhm,
stagnation. So it's all about learning how to properly activate what's going on and then go through a sequence that's going to trigger like so the first let's actually just do one together.
okay.
This first one is called a detox breath. If any of you have respiratory illnesses or you're pregnant, please sit this out. But if you are of good health and you want an experience, this one is very similar to fire breath, which is like an old school pranayama thing. I call it the detox breath because I normally teach it on the back, and it's all about getting particles out of the lung field.
Mhm,
So it's
mhm,
we can do it sitting up, but it's actually really beneficial to do laying on our back.
okay.
And what we're going to do is we're going to inhale through the nose, right? And then
Yeah,
I'm going to show you, we're going to pop the belly out.
yeah,
Okay? So the air is going to be pumped violently through the nose. And I want you to picture the breath, right? Like a 1 inch punch.
yeah.
Like, so we're almost imagining we're blowing out a candle and the candle's all the way at your feet. And we're going to
Mm,
move the air with violence because we're going to snap the diaphragm in and out. Okay. So
yeah,
the
yeah.
inhale's passive.
Uh-huh.
And then,
Mm, right.
okay. So I'll start my timer
So it's
and let's do,
like the exhale is the only one that's forced. The inhale comes automatically.
yeah. Yeah, the inhale is
Yeah,
passive. We're focusing on the exhale being violent.
yeah,
And you might need to get a tissue. But what we're
yeah.
going to
Classic.
do, yeah, if you have anything in your nose, it's coming out. What we're going to do is we're going to channel the breath on the inhale to try to
Yeah.
come all the way up here and all the way out here. So some people, when they
Right.
start doing this, they may feel like part of their nose is stuck. I want you to
Yes.
force the air. It's all about working with tension.
Mm,
So we're going to do this. It takes 90 seconds, and
right.
about 45 seconds in, you are going to feel a burn. In that burn, I want you, if you can't, just observe it because it's showing us which muscles are weakest.
Mm,
So wherever that burning feeling happens, if it's down here,
yeah.
it's in the diaphragm.
Mhm,
If it's within an inch and a half of the
mhm,
body on the
mhm,
sides,
mhm,
it's your intercostals are weak there. If
mhm,
it's inside of the lung tissue, your lung tissue is dirty there. So
mm.
we're just going to do this one time and people are going to gather a lot of information on what's happening in their lung tissue. So I'm going to start the timer.
All
So
right.
go ahead and just get comfortable. Make sure if you're sitting up and doing this that your head is right over your neck. So like we don't want a forward neck position. We want everything to be stable. So for those of you sitting up, you can grab your thumbs. Oh, look at that. And
That's
you
cool.
can The
Fireworks.
double thumbs up.
Yeah,
If you rope your thumbs underneath your armpits, that's like a foolproof way of like making sure your head and your shoulders are all together. Yes. So
that's so hard to do.
yes, if somebody experiences burning through this exercise, after COVID, a lot of people's nasal glands got like their cilia fibers got injured. So if we get done this and you feel like you just jumped in a chlorine pool, that's just your cilia fibers showing you that they have been damaged. And it's only in this nice little exercise we can reestablish so much nerve flow within all of these tissues. All right?
Mm, yeah.
Okay, I'm
You
gonna start
call
the
it like
timer.
you call it detox breath because it's also like pumping the lymphatic system as well, right?
It's doing so much.
Yeah,
It the detox breath, there's people hate it, but it's like it's moving your lymph better than anything else
yeah,
out there.
yeah.
You're cleaning out your nasal glands entirely. We're retoning your nasal glands too. Then if you
Mm,
keep your tongue in the proper position, we're toning your soft palate to be held down.
mm,
We're toning the
mm,
trachea to open up. So sometimes if people have a lot of tension in their neck doing this, it's like they have lymphatic stagnation.
mm,
So it's a way for
mm,
us to kind of test what's going on, as well as
mm.
get people aware of the intercostals and the diaphragm. So let's go
Oh,
ahead and do it.
oh, all right, let's get it.
Okay. So slow motion swallow, lift that tongue against the back third of the tongue against the soft palate. So if you're doing this right, you're going to feel like you can suction cup your tongue.
Yeah.
Okay. So get it back there. Inhale deeply through the nose, fill the belly. 90 seconds detox begin. If both sides aren't moving, shove the air into the side. 'We're halfway. So just keep it aggressive and just pay attention to wherever the tension's building up. 20 more seconds. If you need to, pull your face up so you can open up so that this whole area is open. 3, 2, 1, release. So that's just a way to kind of flush and open everything out. Did you feel anything? You're so strong. I like you're somebody that I would probably want to add weight to. Did you feel any tension in your diaphragm or your intercostals build up?
No, I didn't feel anything anywhere specifically. Like in the past, when I was a child, I used to have asthma, and I feel like maybe here, in my what do you call this?
The
The
esophagus?
esophagus. The
Yeah.
esophagus. Yeah, I felt that there was some tingly feeling, but that was about it, really. Yeah, I didn't feel
Okay.
any. I felt like maybe my head was getting hot.
Okay. Perfect. If we were to do this laying down and you
Yeah,
didn't have any like muscle burning, I would immediately put like a 2 pound weight on your stomach.
right.
To do the next two sets, because the
Yeah,
whole point of that exercise to me is to gain awareness. It's not
yeah.
just like it's great, like we clean the nose out, and the
Mhm,
nose depending on how good you take care of yourself is kind of easy to clean. So after
mhm.
that it's all about getting this like the 1 inch punch. I call it like the 1 second inhale. So let's just say if you're out and you're sprinting, right, and everybody else around you is kind of like gasping for breath. That is what trains you to do a like you can quickly get all the
Suck
way
it up.
back into
Yeah.
yes, you can reoxygenate your
Yeah.
body really fast compared to other
Absolutely.
people,
Yeah.
because like a lot of people that do sprints and runs, they start to cramp up on one side of the body, and to me, like, that's where the diaphragm has
Mm.
been locked up.
Mm.
It's not pumping.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so most people that get done running and they have to hold their knees to support themselves or like lean back,
Mm.
it's because the diaphragm has been overexerted. But if you do
Mm.
something like what we just did and you lay on your back and you put weights on your stomach and you do
Mm.
3 sets of those, you have just
Mm.
strength trained your diaphragm,
That's cool. So then
right?
basically like the lung capacity is increased because now the lungs can go lower, like there's more room to suck in more air.
That to me is just one good exercise of many. Like, so let's go
Right.
into the maximum. So after I would do that, right, I would come right into a max hold. So let's just
Okay.
go ahead and inhale deeply through the nose and fill the belly. Okay. Then what? Keep the belly more full this time. Inhale more, fill the back, fill the sides, fill the chest. Okay. Now here, we're just going to hold for 30 seconds, and you should have no air in your head. So right now, if you feel air between your ears, push down deeper. Most people, when they hold their breath, they kind of clamp down on the muscles and it shoves air back into the head. Instead, we want to open the body up. So if you open your arms up or open your arms overhead, then inhale more and then shove the air wherever there was tension. I know you didn't really have any, but for most people, the diaphragm is really locked up. All right. And then inhale some more. Really try to stretch into the upper chest, into the lumbar, and then exhale with control. Empty the chest, then the sides, keep the belly out, then empty the back, keep the belly out. At the very end, release the belly. Come into a full exhale. Pull the belly button to the spine. Okay. Then, so belly button to the spine. Then the lower intercostals, right, can actually tuck in. So cramp those in and then lift the belly button up. You can breathe here. It's so hard to teach people this without them training for a little while. So you can breathe if you need to shallowly, but as you advance, you can hold empty. So we're pulling the belly button back, we're tucking in, and then we're lifting the belly button up. Now, if you're advanced, you can move the belly button to the front part of the heart, and then the back part of the heart, and then the front part of the heart, and then the back part of the heart.
The
And
belly
we can
button?
release. Yeah.
What do you mean by that? What do you mean by forward and backward?
So the diaphragm has 3 ridges on it, right?
Yeah.
And when we start to gain control, we can push on
Uh-huh.
the sternum, push on the lumbar, and then push out to the sides. And the way that we can train the body to start to do that is after we clean the lung tissue, right? Then after we stretch the lung tissue out, then what we do is we teach the muscles how to contract and pull in
Mm.
so that we
Mm.
can shape the exhale over time. So the
Mhm.
more control that we have over our intercostal muscles,
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
more powerful our exhale becomes.
Mhm.
So the diaphragm we can strength train, but the intercostals we have to learn how to control the shape of it. So
Mm.
the way that people learn how to control the shape first is by holding the minimum. So by holding all of your breath out and then creating almost like a stomach vacuum. It's
Yeah.
similar to a stomach vacuum. So we're sucking the tummy in, which is cool
Yes.
because it works the transverse abdominis, so which
Yes.
is the corset muscles of the body. So we suck the belly button in, right? Then we're teaching these lower intercostals. Like as an opera singer, you learn how to gain flexion out and then in.
How
So
do you
it's
do
like
that?
yeah.
Do you do you
it's
like stick your chest out, or what are you
no,
doing there? Like, are you?
it's literally like your
Oh yeah,
intercostals
I
go.
think I think I got it.
So
Are you like pushing your diaphragm down and then in?
no,
Is that what's
I'm
doing it?
not. I'm not moving my diaphragm. I'm literally. It's such a hard muscle group to teach
Wow,
people. But the first,
that's tough.
yeah, to push them out is tough. To push them in is easier. So I always
Right.
tell people if you can fight for the in, that's when you learn how
Mhm.
to push them out. So
Mhm.
the in is we pull the belly button in, then we clamp these down. So you're making your midsection as tight as possible, and then from
Mhm.
here we pull the belly button up even higher.
Mhm.
And so like in our upper rib cage, we have 2 lungs and then we have a heart. right? The right lung is way bigger than the left lung because the heart's in the way. And then underneath those two things is the diaphragm. And the diaphragm, when it's trained to fall flat and trained to pull up, you can actually mush the bottom of the diaphragm from like the forward part of your heart to the backward part of your heart. You can literally like
Wow.
mush that muscle
Yeah.
to play with it.
It's gonna take some body awareness to get there. That's for sure.
Yeah, and that's why training to me
Yeah.
horizontally is such an
Yeah.
advantage because
Uh,
the floor becomes now a sensation that you
right.
can open your back intercostals upon. So
Mm,
it like the floor when you train on the ground, you have a weight on your
mhm,
tummy, right? So there's more pressure now for you
mhm,
to feel into the body deeper.
mhm,
And then the floor becomes this way for your back to experience your inflation
mhm,
because I mean we can quadruple our lung field.
mhm.
So it's really just about getting the muscles to expand out of the way because the lung tissue is so asymmetrical and bulbous. Like the in bottom of an inflated lung looks like fingers.
That,
it's
that's cool.
it's not like a cute little symmetrical sponge, you
Yeah.
know? It's weird
Yeah.
looking and
Wow.
expansive.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's probably molding in there into all the organs, right? Like of the body. I mean, yeah, the diaphragm is obviously separating the
Mhm.
lungs and the heart and everything like from the rest of the organs, but I guess it's just shoving anywhere where it can so it can, get filled as much as it can when it needs to.
Yeah, so when we start to strength train the diaphragm to get out of the way and to push down, we're at the same time we're generating an enormous massage
Yes.
within all of the internal
Oh,
organs.
oh yeah.
And there's so many women out there that have issues with their like pelvic floor dysfunction, like by the time they're 25. And I feel like it's because most women that I know are holding their stomachs in,
Yes.
you know? So
Yes.
they're just
I
breathing
was
up
I was there
here.
as well at one point.
Yep. And it's, man, the body's meant to be like soft and flowing. So
Yeah.
to me, there's the health nuts that are out there that don't have the popping veins. They look so much healthier to me because their
Hmm.
body looks fluid. It looks like it can receive
Hmm.
muscle, it can expand around the
Hmm.
muscle. Everything's not so like tight.
Hmm.
Um, I think that us women, that the whole corset concept of keeping the belly in as tight as
Yeah.
possible,
Yeah.
it's created pelvic floor dysfunction because our diaphragms aren't dropping the way they're supposed to, and the
Mhm.
internal organs have a deficit of this natural massage that's supposed to happen all the time.
And so the pelvic floor to function properly, does it require like pressure from the diaphragm to take its shape? Is that why it causes dysfunction? Or why does it cause dysfunction when they are constantly sucking their belly in?
When we are sucking our belly in,
Yeah.
we're holding the diaphragm into an upright position. So we might be able to move it like this, but it's not falling
Yes.
flat.
Yes.
And in
Yes.
doing so, our internal organs are staying in kind of one position. So when we drop our diaphragm flat, there's a 2 to 3 centimeter movement in everything. Even our kidneys, which are like seemingly just locked onto our back, they float down a
Yeah.
whole inch and a half
Yeah.
every time we breathe
Yeah.
correctly. Now, if we don't breathe correctly, all those things are just right there. Now, take someone who's sitting at a desk all day that may not like walk every day and they're sitting. So when we're sitting too, there's no activation of the glutes, right? So the lower body kind of comes online, and then you add a shallow breath to that, and then you add, super tight panties that are made of plastic. Or you add some soda to that diet, or that person's dehydrated, and you
Yeah.
keep those behaviors up for 10 years or 20 years.
Mhm.
I mean, I was a girl in school that like I didn't bring a water bottle to school when I was in high school. Definitely was wearing like plastic, unhealthy clothing,
Mhm.
and then sitting at a desk for 8 hours a day. So when we combine just some of these natural behaviors, you can see that the internal organs have been kind of like locked and they're not really being moved unless people have like a
Hmm.
good exercise program. But even if
Hmm.
they do have a good exercise program and they're breathing shallowly, sitting at a
Yeah.
desk all day,
Yeah.
those internal organs aren't being moved around.
Hmm.
Um, so to me, like learning how to breathe well can
Yeah.
change so much within people. It changes the nervous system, which
Um,
allows you to heal
yeah.
deeper, you know, but
Yes.
then it creates all of these things. And when you look at in America, because I teach people all over the world, when I teach people in California pelvic floor with the breath, they're always like, this is the opposite of my teacher. And then I'll teach someone in the Middle East. And I teach a Tibetan technique. So, like, I learned from an Apache medicine man who was trained by Mongolians how to add pelvic floor into my breath work. And his style was based on power, it was based on
Mm.
building energy in the body. And
Mm.
that's a very different focus than like postpartum mommy groups that are teaching breath work. So like if someone gives birth to a baby and they're learning how to like be aware of their pelvic floor, the way
Yeah.
that us American teachers say is like when your diaphragm moves, you
Yeah.
move your pelvic floor with it. So that there's this
Right.
motion with it. That's not how I teach it. I
Mm.
teach a compression expansion style, and that's to
That
build
makes more
energy in the body.
sense to me. Like if I blow out, it feels like I wanna, like my bum it feels, or like, my anus area feels like it wants to contract when I blow out, like automatically. It doesn't feel right to be the other way around.
Okay, okay, so when you're blowing out,
Yeah. It's
you want
supposed to be going
to.
up.
So the way that we teach it, I'm just going to tell you the way that I teach it and not speak for anybody else. The way that I teach it is as you inhale,
Yeah.
okay, the diaphragm comes down, you lift the pelvic floor to
Yeah.
create compression in order to create a massive amount of like basically a squishing inside of the
I see
body.
that.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then when I release the diaphragm, so when I'm exhaling, I push down. And it's funny because it's the opposite of
Okay.
how people teach it
Yeah.
until you
Yeah.
get to opera. And
I
when you
see.
are pushing a note out of your body, like you
Yeah.
really have to be aware of your pelvic floor.
Yeah, yeah, it's really wild because for me, for some reason, like my whole life, I've just automatically felt like it's easier for my pelvic floor to rise as I blow the air out.
Yeah.
Like as if it's like pressure, like coming together as I'm blowing out one way and then the other way is like coming like this. But when I'm breathing in, it feels the other one's going down and then the other one is coming in at the same time. But you're saying that it should be the opposite. You're saying that my pelvic floor should be rising as my diaphragm is going down. So it's basically everything's pushed outwards like a cylinder.
Okay, so there's two things to say here. A, if you're aware of your pelvic floor while you're breathing, you're doing a great job. Also, there's no right or wrong answer here because when we look at breath through history, the Tibetans and like to me, I'm always looking at the masters. Like, who are the people that are moving objects with their mind? Who are the people melting rocks? I want to train the way that they're training. They're not training the way that we're teaching postpartum mommies to train, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
So, as I look at them, there's breathing techniques that create and establish heat within the body. Then there's breathing techniques that to me, anytime you're focusing on heat, you're focusing on energy.
yeah,
So what I'm describing is closest to like they call it the reverse vase or the sumo breathing, the tumo breathing. There's a lot of different words for it, and you can feel like you can see like you're doing it right seemingly and then have no pressure built up, so it's all
yeah,
about the feeling.
yeah,
You know what I mean? It's
yeah,
about when you inhale, the diaphragm is dropping, and
yeah,
then you have to time the pelvic floor rising. And then as you exhale, if you exhale the way that I teach people, is you exhale all this air, and then at the very end, the diaphragm starts to lift. You know what I mean? So it's like it's all about timing it so that you're creating
mhm,
expansion within your internal organs and then contraction and then
mhm,
expansion and then contraction.
mhm,
And I think it's a nuance
mhm,
within your own body. But if I'm
mhm,
going to sit outside and meditate, I love to first clean my lung field, first get the body warmed up
Yeah,
for proper breathing.
I
And
I
then when
see.
I drop into that state, I'm
Mm,
all about how do I generate the most amount of compression and then the most amount of expansion.
mm,
And when we
mm.
do this properly, you can feel the whole system. Like you get hot, you start to sweat,
Yeah,
everything's starting to become awake from the inside
I can
because
imagine.
you're generating electricity.
Yeah, that's incredible. So what do you mean by that? Like when you are generating electricity, what's going on there? Is it some kind of fascial connection, energy transfer? Where is the energy generated from? Is it from the air that we breathe, or what's going on there?
So the fascia is holding all of the electrical systems of the body. So, like our brain, 2 to 3 pound pinkish organ, connected to the whole body through the nervous system. And most people don't visualize this, but I love to describe it as like fiber optic cables. So, like our brain is electrically connected to every single cell of your body. Every cell of your body has a nerve ending attached to it that wires itself back to the brain. And we are always in this oscillation between the energy coming into us and the energy coming out of us. So at
Mm,
268 miles an hour, right, which is just unfathomable, our nervous system is taking in information, which means that only
mm,
8 times a second do you and I are we really fully present with each other?
mm,
Because in those other oscillations, you're internal and your body's going, am I hungry? Am I tired?
yeah.
Can I relax here?
Uh,
There's so much happening in every given moment. Now, when we start to work on the breath, we're starting to bring more awareness to these moments of the in between, right, with
mm,
ourselves. Now, when we slow the breath down, the heart rate slows down, then the brain waves slow down. Okay.
mm, yeah.
And the fascia tension is what's distending the nervous system. So as we slow all of our systems down, the fascia starts to relax. The
Mm,
same way if an explosion went off outside, your body would
yes.
tense up. So it's
Yes.
the fascia is responding to our emotional. It is our immediate response mechanism to our reactions. The fascia is,
Like a receiver.
yeah. And we're also receiving information from like our outside environment through through the nerves back to the
Mm,
brain. Now,
mm,
when we're doing something like tumo breathing, where we are coordinating our breath, right, with all of these things very, very intentionally,
yeah.
because the fascia is holding the fascia can do amazing things. And it's hard to quantify because the science around it is still so confused. I have like the 5 textbooks written on the subject matter where they really outline where the fascia is, how the anomalies of how it crosses through our hips. We're all
Mm,
not made the same. So like the fascia lines, we know, here's the 9 major vertical fascia bands. This is how they kind of run through our body. There's anomalies around how they like link through certain areas.
mm,
But when we start to play with the breath and the fascia is flowing, to me there's something that happened in my own practice like 2 years ago, which is why I'm online talking about this stuff. And I've been teaching the breath for a long time. And I hurt my foot. I went to my doctor and I was like, I have a foot problem. I don't know what's going on, but I can't sprint anymore, so I'm upset. And he's like,
mm,
you don't have a foot problem, you have a fascia problem.
uh-huh,
And it took me, but several hundred hours of research and some experimentation, and I fixed my foot. When I fixed my foot, I went to my parents who both have knee problems, and I was like, maybe you guys have a fascia problem. Let me see if this will work. Both of their knee pain went away. And then because I'm a good coach, I was like, hey, you guys want to add something to your breathwork practice. And when I did this, the breath that I've been teaching for a decade changed within my clients. After I started doing so I started the class with fascia, then we did breath. Everybody basically fell asleep at the end of class. My goal is always to we clean, we do our work, and then drop them into theta. And 50% of my class could always get there because I could tell their breath rate would naturally drop and they'd almost fall asleep or something. But it was always like 50%. When I added fascia work, everybody dropped in. And it
mm,
was like by creating ease within the fascia, the breath became substantially different for their brain.
mm,
And the more I get into fascia and the electrical connection and how the fascia is carrying the electricity, I'm like looking at the muscles like they're batteries. Like
Mhm.
the muscles are just batteries
Yes.
based on how well we can use our fascia. And
Mm,
Coach Chong Z is someone, he does the secret of athleticism, and he's doing really interesting EMG studies on the fascia and the fast twitch,
mm,
basically redefining what we know of as fast twitch training. And I'm following his work closely, but he's not involving the breath. And I feel like
mm.
if we involve the breath with the
Yeah,
flowing fascia, right,
yeah,
that's where we're going to experience a different peak in athleticism.
absolutely.
And there, there's so much I don't know, but there's so much I'm excited to talk about.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know,
I was gonna ask you at the beginning, like, what do I not know about, or tell me something I don't know about fascia because I don't know what I don't know, right? I don't know like what to ask you because I mean, there is so many ways that we could take this conversation, but I think it's so fascinating to talk about the fascia as an energy transfer system or an information or communication system in the body, as you talked about it, because we at the beginning, most of us tend to think of the fascia as just this basic structure that encapsulates everything in the body. It surrounds every organ, every tissue, your brain, like everywhere, it goes everywhere, all the way to your mitochondria even. And basically, we just tend to think of it as the structure that it's responsible for energy transfer in terms of mechanical energy, but not necessarily cellular
not,
energy or
not all of it.
information that your body, but because that's just what the mainstream believes, that it's just something that, oh, you apply load on the muscle, then the tension just travels through the fascia and the tendons and the ligaments, and it helps the body to move efficiently, when in reality you like to call the body an instrument, right? A musical instrument. And uh,
Yeah.
could you elaborate on that a little bit, what you mean by that?
Yeah. So the body is made of tubes, right? And these tubes are moving fluids and gases through it and around it at all times. And even like what you're doing right now, the red light therapy, people who do cold plunging, all of that stuff is playing with our mitochondria, right? And
Yeah.
we get to the cell, right? The cell, and then we're going to go back it up into the instrument. The cell itself has little organelles in it, and the mitochondria is the one responsible for making our energy and our ADP. And well, the mitochondria have this ability to split, divide, and move outside of the cell, which is why people do cold plunging. So they can increase their adipose tissue, which is just when we take a picture of someone through certain imaging, you can see the mitochondria looks a little bit brown. So when
Yeah.
we're babies, we have, like brown adipose tissue. Well, the reason why the mitochondria can split and divide and go outside of the cell is because of fascia. It's all through the fascia.
Mm.
So in 2018, there was a pathologist and a doctor, Dr. Carlos Stecco, that came forward that said, hey, you guys, we've missed a huge thing. And the pathologist to me kind of blows my mind. He's been a pathologist for 30 years, teaching other pathologists how to read. Pathologists are the ones that take the little slides, and then they say, okay, this is your diagnosis based on what I see in your cell tissue inside of whatever organ they're looking at. And there've always been these like striations within it, and they always said like, oh, this is just where the tissue is damaged, blah blah blah. And this guy came forward in 2018 and said, we have had pathology all wrong. This is not striations. This is fascia. Fascia is
Mm.
moving through every single cell through the integrins wrapped around the mitochondria.
That's so
And
cool.
yeah, it's going to change. So it's going to change allopathic medicine. They are calling forward, the Fascia Congress is calling forward for all of these doctors around the world to come together and re-look at this system that we've completely ignored. And the way that I like to describe it to people is like, imagine if we looked at a tree, and the only way we ever looked at this tree is by cutting it down and by slicing it up and by looking at the slices. And now we're going to look at the tree, and we are going to, in a sense, look at the flow of fluids from the mycelium of the roots all the way up into the tissues of the tree and how they travel. So the body is a musical instrument to me. I play 8 instruments. So I like all over here is just like a bunch of instruments. And and That's because of two things. Like my first thing that I did with coaching people is like me and my ex-husband, we ran a chiropractic clinic. And in
Mm,
chiropractic, you're adjusting people. He was an upper cervical chiropractor. He followed just an incredible pre and post protocols. I mean, and our results were incredible with people. And we would only adjust the upper two bones of the neck. And then put them through these sequences that allowed the nervous system to self-correct.
mm,
And I loved it that way. I got great results with the care that he gave. We gave extraordinary results to the clients that we had. Minimal adjustments. It was spectacular stuff. But people would always come out the same way, and I always just felt like there's got to be a way that like we could put people like get people fully in alignment, and then the soft tissue, because that's what's stabilizing everything in the neck, that the
yeah,
soft tissue could relearn the new
yeah,
shape so that it would
yeah.
hold infallibly,
Reprogram.
you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And the thing that I always thought was very overlooked was this foot structure and how the foot ends up changing the spine over a course of time. So you can give someone the perfect chiropractic adjustment, right?
Yeah,
Their
yeah,
nervous system can be awesome. Then they get up and they walk out the door and they have such tight feet that they're no longer walking along like the vertical plantar fascia, which runs down the middle of the foot, right? If
yeah,
everything
yeah,
is squished here, you're going to
yeah,
have someone walk on the outside line of their foot, and over time that's going to pull their spine, it's going to pull their knee out of alignment, it's going to pull their hip out of alignment, it's going to pull the
yeah.
spine out of alignment. So
Mm,
I just always thought that there was going to be an easier way. And when you play instruments like this, you have to tune a lot of instruments.
mm,
You have to get really good at tuning the frequency
mhm,
of each instrument.
mm,
And if you're
mm,
off on a string, I can sit back and play as good as I possibly can, and it's going to sound like crap. And when I started studying the fascia and these nine major, so here, let's back up for a second. So fascia is a triple helix collagen fiber network that touches everything, right? And I like to look at it kind of like this loofah sponge. And inside this loofah sponge, you can see there's a couple areas that are a little denser, right? And this is just like a natural thing that grew off of a plant outside.
yeah.
So when we look at our body, we actually have something very similar. So this is almost in the shape of like a short person's leg. And the way that I like to describe it is like these major points in here, we have those too. We actually have nine of them that bond our foot all the way to the back of our skull. So at the back of our skull, we actually have 26 fascia insertions.
Mm,
And these
mm,
vertical bands, right? Like each individual string itself is just like a
mhm,
tiny little nanotubule made of collagen that's moving some sort of questionable fluid through in it, right? And then the fluid around it we know is hyaluronic acid.
mm,
And when they band together, when you have one of them, right? If you take your tongue and put it to the side of your cheek, that's mostly collagen on the inside of your cheek. That's what fascia is, right? And then your
right.
saliva itself is made of hyaluronic acid, which is the same fluid that goes in between it mixed with some enzymes. So
Wow.
hyaluronic acid is everywhere in our
Wow.
body. Our tears is mostly hyaluronic. Like, so when you cry, rub it all over your face because hyaluronic acid is the anti-aging solution. Um,
Yeah.
but
It's
it's
the antidote to your crying.
yeah, yeah, just rub it in. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
good for you. It's in the fluid that comes out of us when we're turned on. There's hyaluronic acid in there mixed with some other stuff. So it's in our joints. We call it synovial fluid, but that's a super dense version of hyaluronic acid. And hyaluronic acid, if we would look at it under the microscope, is just a big acid molecule that's
Mhm,
hosting 1,600 water molecules. So it's like if we had like a vat of it and I slapped it, it would act like honey. Like it would just like all kind of like be together, but it's mostly like
mhm,
water. So it's like the silver water liquid,
mhm,
which is kind of like our saliva, right?
mhm.
So when we're kids, we have all of this hyaluronic acid fluid in between our fascia bands, our major fascia bands, which act like rubber bands, right? Like they hold tension. If you were to like palpate the bottom of your foot right now and then like
Yeah.
engage your toe, you
Yeah.
could see like a band
Yeah.
show up. That's our
Yeah.
plantar fascia band, right?
Mhm,
So
mhm,
that connects that base one is the part of our superficial back line, and
Hmm.
it goes up the back line of the body and then around the head to the forehead,
Yeah.
right? So we have
Yeah.
9 of those. And to me, if the tuning, right, if the tension of what's happening on my right side is the same as what's happening on my left side, then
Mm.
I'm going to have like equal, my knees are going to age the same way. My hips are going to age the same way. Now, if I have bad tuning, and that's like, which I do, my right side, I have torn up my right quad and my right hamstring like nobody's business.
Really?
So by the time I was, yeah, I trained really hard, really good. Like I had a great time as a college athlete.
When you say you torn it, like, do you mean literally?
I had a stage like stage 3 tear in my upper quad, and then
Really?
I had
Wow.
like a stage 1 tear in my lower hamstring, both on my right side. And
Mm.
so like for me, I had severe misalignment. So like my right
Wow.
hip was having my right hip is 50 years old and my left hip is 35, you know? So to me, when we're talking about tuning, and the whole time I was at the chiropractic
Yeah.
office, even though I was getting world-class adjustments and my nervous system was firing, I still had this entire lower body issue that was throwing my
Yeah.
joints out of place.
Mm.
So I built a sequence that uses 8 rules. I studied every fascia release technique, and I say that, and I feel like somebody always sends me a DM. They're like, "Have you heard of this?" I'm like, "Nope." Now I got another book to read. But for the ones that I've experienced,
Yeah.
there is definitely a sequence of what works. And out of those sequences, a lot of the stuff hasn't been updated since the early 1900s. So Dr. Ida Rolf was the one that really brought fascia into modern day consciousness. This was 100 years ago. And back then, we didn't know that fascia went all the way into the cells. She was like, this is intense. We need to clear it. And her
Right.
concept, she was super physiology based. I like really appreciate what she did for massage therapy. I think she
Yeah.
elevated it
Hmm.
entirely. She brought it into a
Hmm.
different level of science. Um, but we have so much better imaging now. So when you look at what the fascia is and these stuck areas that we've always been palpating and feeling, right? When we zoom into what that stuck area is, it's nothing that's happening. It's not a physical issue, it's a flow issue. So
Right.
when we start to look at the flowing of the fluids, right,
Yeah.
we have 2 questions. There's a 10 spot. So we can break this 10 spot up, which is going to create inflammation in the fascia.
Yeah.
And then the fascia can self heal, right?
Yeah.
And that's how most fascia release is. It's like you find the tension and then
Hmm.
you break that tension apart in a number of different methods, right?
Hmm.
You can use cupping, you can use a fascia blaster, you can palpate it with your fingers, whatever. What I found is that we had been overlooking the the geometric shape of it. So when I got into studying tensegrity, I started remaking some models, like Kenneth Snelson's Project X. I remade it with my uncle for fun, just to like learn about how tension is held in, just trying to think of it upside down and backwards and forwards.
Visualize it. Yeah.
Yeah, there's this geometric shape called an icosahedron, and like it's an icosahedron. It's like a 26-sided shape, and when you blow it up, it's this huge object, and then it actually collapses all the way on top of itself. Like you can fold it into a single triangle.
Hmm.
And Buckminster Fuller used that geometric shape to actually help stabilize submarines, like back in the 60s. And something happened in my brain where I was like, maybe what if we're looking at the fascia wrong? Like we all know it needs to flow. The stagnation is not serving it. So as I was looking at ultrasounds and I was thinking of my grandfather was obsessed with Buckminster Fuller. So like as I was thinking about this shape, I was like, what if we have it wrong? What if we don't have to break any of the fascia?
Yeah.
What if we can just create the environment that it needs to re-stimulate the flow? So that's why I have my 8 rules of the fascia flow, because I really think
Hmm.
that we did overlook something.
Hmm.
I think that we can be much less aggressive with it.
Right.
And by prompting by using hydration, timing, compression, a proper warm up, a proper activation of the piezoelectric channel. It's all very simple, but when we do that, we can ask the fibrocytes, which is the cell within the fascia,
Hmm.
to re elicit this fluid. And that's
Mm,
what we didn't know before 2018. And it's
okay.
funny because anytime you read old ancient texts and literature from like the Shaolin monks, or, you're just like, maybe they knew all of this the whole time and they're just speaking about it poetically in riddles. So I say,
Yeah,
like, oh, I'm doing it, but it's like, nah, the masters have been probably doing this forever because they've known,
yeah,
gymnasts have known forever. We should be able to palpate our tissues to the bone.
mm,
Like when you touch a tiger,
yeah,
there's this, I haven't touched one, but I've read a lot about like these athletes who have done experimentations trying to spring load the body like
right.
gymnasts, and when you palpate a feline, like a predator feline like that, you can push their muscles all the way to the bone and they have
Wow,
no reaction. Like
wow.
there's nothing but fluidness
Mm.
within how they like hold their body.
Suppleness, yeah.
Hmm.
That's incredible. So yeah, like that's a fantastic overview of like how the body is like a musical instrument. We have to be perfectly balanced, left and right, for front and back to be able to be organized in a specific way. And then if the tensions are distributed equally throughout the body, we're able to have this fluid and efficient movement, which makes us better athletes for life. Because I feel like everybody is an athlete, right? Or should be aiming to be an athlete of life, because that means you're just a good mover if you're an athlete. That's what
Yeah.
athletes are.
Yep.
Athletes are people who are great movers and that they are good at a specific skill which they practice over and over and over, which is called kung fu. So like if you practice kung fu in every aspect of your life and you become intentional about it and you have healthy fascia, you can become any athlete that you want. You can basically be put in any environment and you can pick up a skill really, really fast because your body is efficient at adapting at any environment, any angle, any temperature,
Mhm.
and so on. So I think that what you're saying is like super important. And yeah, what you were saying about the fascia, identifying it as this liquid rather than something that we need to break up, it totally changes the way that we think about things, because we just always think that, oh yeah, harder is better, or going
Right.
more on. In reality, the nervous system as well sometimes rejects things when we go too hard. Like I used to have this mentality as well in the past that the more I do something, the better it is. When in reality, no, better is better or smarter is better, not more is better. So if understanding the specific system that you're working with and then trying to understand that actually being more subtle with things can elicit a way greater response. And especially as you combine with your work, the breath work with the fascial manipulation techniques to be able to allow the body to expand and to become more supple, then that allows you to get way faster results and also to keep those results. When, most of the times, why do we always do something and then we lose it afterwards? Like, when people come to me for mobility and they have been stretching for years and they've been doing passive stretching and they've just been very erratic with their stretching, or they've been holding long stretches, right?
Yeah.
I tell them that you need to strengthen the body through full range of motion, grant your brain needs to grant access, to
Hmm.
your body, that you can gain the mobility that you want, and so that it doesn't get tight after 5 minutes after you've just stretched. You need to grant the access, from the nervous system. If you don't do that through showing it full range of motion and strength at the same time, basically it's going to go straight back to what it was before, because it just all depends on your nervous system state as well.
Yeah, because the body gets scared. Like, I love what you're
Yeah,
saying because my issue, and I really try to publicly be very tactful because I, a lot of people have experienced great results with a lot of the old school methods. And I have total love and respect for what got us here, But when we look at how fascia has a fluid moving around it and then also through it, and
yeah,
the fluid that's inside of it is what the doctors are arguing about. So the Germans believe that it's lymphatic tissue, the Chinese believe it's chi floors, and then there's a disagreement in America. Half of them think it's plasma, half of them think it's something that's quantum, and then the other half think it's lymphatic. So it's like we have division everywhere with what the
Right.
fluid that's
Right.
inside of it. And the fluid that's
Yeah.
inside of it has four different characteristics that are incredibly tough to study. So they're going to argue about it for a while. It's viscoelastic, it's polyphasic, it's metaphasic or polymorphic, metaphasic, viscoelastic, and piezoelectric. So it's a fluid that's carrying an electrical charge. There's a lot of whatever about it. They're doing some very weird nanoparticle studies right now in China where they're like embedding certain fluids, like nanoparticles, to go into it so that they can map it. I don't know. It's questionable to me,
Right.
but
Yeah.
we're
I hope
learning.
that's not.
But
I hope that's not on humans, or even
yeah,
if it's on animals, like poor animals, whatever that is,
I
because it
know.
could be toxic stuff.
And I'm still gonna read the stuff after it happens. But
Of
in my
course,
opinion,
interesting to find out.
yeah. In my opinion, the electrical component is the confusing part
Mm.
and the exciting
Yes.
part because
Yeah.
my thought is that we are radio towers. We are significantly more electrical than cell biology. And we've been obsessed with cell biology. All of us have a bunch of supplements that we've been in and out of taking. We have been all about the molecules and not about the flow. And to me, the flow has two components. It's literally flow, like where the nanotubules of the body, so like arteries, if you have a dead body in front of you, arteries will hold this shape, but veins will fall completely flat. They're collapsible, right? The
Mm.
fascia, in my opinion, that icosahedron shape that I was showing, the fascia is collapsible, just like a sponge. So like we can, if it's elastic enough, we can just squish the whole thing. And when you've gone to these other, like most of the other fascia release stuff, when they've had stagnation in these, they find that stagnation, then they rip it apart, which is in a sense ripping the nanotubules that are carrying this fluid, this electrical fluid
Mm.
through it,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So by reestablishing the shape, everything can flow. But if we were to go into here, right, with no rules, no
Yeah.
sequence, like you're saying, oh, I
Yeah.
found a stagnant spot in the middle of my body, right?
Ah,
So, like, not respecting a
yeah.
sequence of like how the
Yeah.
skeleton is built. The skeleton is built
Yeah.
like and supported from the ground up. Like, we need to take care. To me, there fascia release should be always feet up. Like, never do we
Mm.
touch the spine until the lower body's released by 80%, like it
Mm.
scares me like when
Mm.
people are like, I'm just gonna attack the neck. It's like, oh God, I hope you can look to the
Yeah.
other side tomorrow.
Um,
But when we are aggressive with these, we're just ripping it open.
yeah.
If we hit, like I tell people all the time, to respect your 80% pain threshold, right? Because the flow of fluid, if we create tension and tightness, everything locks up. It's no longer safe for the body to let go, and the
Yeah.
fibrocytes will not elicit the fluid. So you can be doing
Mm.
all of the right things. If you're not hydrated and doing that, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
If you're not holding it for the long enough time, it's not going to work. If you didn't warm it up, it's not going to work. If you didn't, if you're pushing too hard and being too aggressive with the body, it's not going to
Mhm.
work. So it's
Mm.
a like the thing as a coach is like we gotta get them to understand all of the basics of physiology. Like, I get it, you just want me to teach you how to take care of your fascia, but you have to see
Yeah.
that the
Yes.
fascia has a grain, that it
Yeah.
has, it's moving a fluid through it. Like
Yeah.
we are radio towers.
Yeah.
And to me, when we are unlocking the flow of fascia to our feet, and we are opening the mechanoreceptors of the feet fully to be back online, we are opening up our ability to uptake electrons from the natural environment because
Mhm.
we are conductive. The fascia is highly conductive. So, like, as the fascia becomes more fluid, more open, more online, our whole nervous system opens up. Like, we are meant to live partially outside of the body. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like, we're not just in here. Like, we
Yes.
understand that about our phones. I'm
Yeah.
talking to you on the other side of the world. But our bodies are meant to be this elaborate electromagnetic frequency emitter, like at least 8 feet outside of our body. So
Mhm.
if our fascia is all locked up and clammed and that electrical part of our body is kind of skitzing out in here, we're not going to experience the biggest, brightest, fullest version of ourselves, you know?
Mhm.
And as simple as it sounds, it's like, well, we take care of our fascia, from the feet upwards, and we optimize and double the breath power, and then let's see what happens. Because I think we have a lot of brilliant geniuses that are kind of like a little dimmed out and dulled online because they're not like they're not fully open, and they can feel it, but they
Hmm.
don't know the sequence to open it up, and they don't have
Hmm.
2 hours a day to just go lay
Yes,
outside and
yes,
you know.
yes. Yeah, that's why it's so important that people like do like your courses, because you have put things in a structured manner that makes sense, and it's like a specific protocol that you have made based on your understanding and your experience and your research, that it has to be done in a specific way with specific, in a specific order, so that it can have the best effects to actually stick. You don't want to be doing something that you have to do like all the time and like forever. Of course, there is some maintenance work that we all need to do. That goes without saying.
Yes.
But, for the biggest things that we want to get rid of, we definitely don't have to be taking care of them all the time if we take the right protocol like yours that you are offering, right?
Yeah, so the fascia, I broke it down into a 20-minute a day sequence, and then 3 days a week. In the first 6 months with people, the fascia is an intensive, And what I say is I just don't skip your feet. Like 5 days a week, you need to do your feet, and it's a 20-minute a day, 5 days a week for 6 months. You're gonna have extraordinary results, and um, like a lot of people, my F minus students, they still get out of their knee braces. They only do it a couple days a week and they only do one part of it, but they're still managing their pain better than they were. But I love my A plus students that, train hard and they feel spring load. They're in their 60s now and they feel better than they did when they were in their 40s. And their skin is changing, and like their crepiness around their skin, everything is kind of anti-aging and pulling itself into place. And they're like, what's up? And it's like, well, you're eliciting hyaluronic acid in the deep tissues of your entire lower body for the last 4 months. Like
Wow.
you're dragging hyaluronic acid through it's touching all of you.
Yeah,
So
it's
it's not
incredible.
just like you're helping your feet, you're helping the
Yeah.
entire structure. But
Hmm.
yeah, the business owners I work with, it's 20 minutes a day, 5 days a week for your fascia, and then it's just 10 minutes a day for your breath. If you train 5 days a week, you'll double in 5 weeks. My business partner is like, we should guarantee the breath doubling because it's just so, and I'm like, nah, I don't want to have people track it. I don't want to, go through that process, but it's fun. It's like really cool to know that
Yeah.
people can double really quickly. And people's fascia, it takes a little more time because my approach is gentler. Like there's way more aggressive ways to get
Yeah.
to a certain point. But if you don't
Yeah.
want inflammation, if you want to train, if you don't want to spend $1,000 on a rolfer and then have to see them every 6 months to keep your results, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like just
Yeah.
do this at home.
Yeah, exactly. It's what we do consistently over a longer period of time. Even if it's small, the act of doing it, it builds up, right? Little tiny action steps lead to huge results. So if we're doing them like consistently, this is what yields the change that we want to see. Goes with anything in life, right? This is not just about taking care of your body, but it's got to do with your business, like with your
Yeah.
relationships, with everything. If there's something that you care about, you put effort and intention behind it, and you do that consistently. You don't have to do it every day, or at least you need to do it consistently weekly, for example, depending on what you're doing. But if you're not going to do something consistently, then you're going to fall off track and it's not going to create the change that you want in your life.
Right.
So definitely having some form of like right mindset when it comes to this is super important, because exactly as you said, some individuals can see some fantastic results in a really short period of time because they are adherent, they're consistent, they're really determined to change their body, and those are usually the type of people who have been through a lot of suffering and pain in their life, right? Whereas people who are well are way less likely to stick to something
Mhm.
because they don't feel like this discomfort or this pain, or they feel like, oh, it would be nice to be more flexible or be more supple or to feel like I could move better, but it I don't feel like I need to. But as soon as something happens in their life, that's when they start to realize, oh yeah, I really need to start paying attention to this stuff. But I have been through a lot of these things myself in life, through a lot of pains and discomforts. And I've realized that it's so important to take care of my body on a daily basis a little bit,
Yeah.
so I don't need to take a lot, take care, a massive amount of care afterwards once I hit a wall or I injure or I hurt myself. So it's better just to have this little self-care that you're
Hmm.
doing on a daily basis, which goes like a really long way.
That's how I feel too. You know, I have a lot of massage therapists that train under me, and I'm just like, you realize that like I'm teaching you to remove your job so that like instead of having one person on the table where you're only releasing one person, you can have 50 people in the room. And during that same exact hour and a half with those people, you can take 50 people through a deep awareness of their body and show them a tool that they can have forever and ever. You know,
Yeah,
and it's funny. It's like I love having massage therapists learn my technique, but it's like you guys realize that like we're replacing your job. We're teaching people how to do what they should be doing to themselves on a daily
yeah.
basis, you know?
Yeah, yeah. But sometimes it's nice when another nervous system is touching your nervous system, right? Because in that state, you're able to fully surrender. Like I find that if I'm doing things to myself, I can never truly be truly like parasympathetic. But if someone is doing it to me and I trust that individual, I can really, go into that deep healing space and then we can elicit really incredible results. So I feel like there's always going to be a need for body healers and, physiotherapists and manual
Abs
therapists in the world.
Absolutely. For sure. But
Because,
those same therapists need someone to work on themselves.
oh, 100%, everybody needs someone to like take care of each other, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
There's
how
always
come,
room for healers, you know? There's always room
yeah,
for
it's
healers.
all
But it's
kinds, all kinds, physical, spiritual.
Yeah, it's beautiful to me though to think about, wow, in that same 1 hour, they could work on one page, like one client, or they can work on 50 people. And I think like that to me is a real turning point because
Yeah,
I think I'm teaching people how to brush their teeth. Like 100 years from now, it would be really nice if this was just common knowledge, you
yeah,
know?
yeah,
People don't
yeah.
realize 100 years ago, we didn't have a nylon toothbrush. It wasn't invented until 1926. That was
Uh-huh.
the first time we had a nylon toothbrush. So before then, I mean, we were still, people were just losing their teeth. You know what I mean? Like it was normal and natural to lose your teeth.
Hmm.
And now it's like, oh, we know we need to floss, we need to brush, we need to like
Uh-huh.
maintain habits. I feel that way about the fascia. It's
Uh-huh.
normal right now for people to get a knee and hip replacement at a certain age. And it's like,
Yeah,
no, that's not normal.
that's not
That
normal.
is
No.
unhealthy fascia.
Yeah, yeah. You want to stick with your own things for as long as you can without pain and with full functionality. And if you want to do that you want to be functional and healthy for the rest of your life, you have to take, again, like what me and Brooke are saying, we need to take these action steps every single day and take the ownership of our health because no one is going to come and save us. We always want to look outside of us that someone is going to do something to us externally to fix us, when in reality, the work happens on a daily basis. And,
Yeah.
you don't have your doctor on top of you telling you, you need to do this, you need to do this. That's why you need to become your own doctor, do your own research and learn and educate yourself so you can be able to, take control of your health. I think this is one of the most important things.
Andres, I really like what you're doing with your channel and the information that you're bringing to people. I really respect what you're doing, and I like it's been great to look at you and just your red light the whole time.
Do you still have like a few more minutes, or are
Mhm.
you in a rush to go?
No, I'm not in a rush.
Okay, okay. So I would like to ask you, like, how can we identify an unhealthy fascia? Like, what would be some symptoms that people experience, or some things that people have told you that they have experienced that you can maybe pinpoint and give to people so that they can identify right now?
Yeah. Well, on my website, musicalbreathwork.com, I actually have a free breath and fascia test. So if people just
Hmm.
go to my website, they can type it in and they watch a whole instructional video of how to like breath test yourself and then what those results mean. And the same thing with fascia. What I love to tell people to do is to take off their shoe and then see if they can stretch all of their toes, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
then if you can't stretch all of your toes, like let's just say if your pinky toe is offline,
Yeah.
that's a sign of fascia tension and not to
Mm,
be taken lightly. Because
mm,
as we age, all of our balance and coordination comes from what's happening at the bottom of our foot here.
mm,
And if these start to go offline and we start to get like some moderate neuropathy up here, this is when we have substantial walking issues when we're older.
mm.
Another simple test for people is to come into like a little bit of a goddess, and people call it different all over the world, just like a little low squat.
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because if people can't do this, like what I often find is like people will go into this position and they'll be like, ah, my right hip or like my
Right. Somewhere
ankle,
side.
or
Yeah.
yes, exactly. So that's a good barometer, just a simple little squat test
Yeah.
of which side, if there's symmetry in the tension, or
Yeah.
if there's a side that's like tighter. Um, that's like another really easy one. But most people, I mean, unless you've
Mm,
been taking care of your fascia, you got fascia
mm,
problems. The toe
mm. Yeah.
dexterity test I love doing with people. It's can you create space between all of them? And then can you isolate your big toes? So keep your big toes down, lift only the baby toes, right?
Yeah.
Then keep all the
Yeah.
baby toes down, lift only the big toes. And what we want to see is the big toes coming up evenly on both sides. Sometimes people can lift one, but the other is meh.
Yeah.
That shows us that there's some either nerve impingement, some fascia problems, some toe dexterity, but that's going to create up the instrument of the body. That tension, that offlineness is going to create issues in the hips, in the knees, in the ankles. So everything is connected to our foot health. So for me, it's getting people's foot health fully back
Mm,
online while
mm.
we get the fascia to flow.
Yeah.
And then let a lot of things start to happen all by itself. And I mean, the foot stuff is so fun to teach people
Yeah.
because their athletic ability immediately, like your balance is better.
Mm, mm.
you,
Yeah.
you do some
Yes.
toe mobility drills twice a week, your balance improves, your running improves, your walking gait improves, your ability to jump improves. It's fun.
Yeah. It's so great that you talk so much about the feet, and I'm also very passionate about this topic because we receive all the information. That's the only thing touching the ground, right? When we're standing. So if that's the only thing touching the ground, that means that all the information about our environment and our proprioception, so our other information that we're receiving is through the feet. And if we are not receiving the information correctly, now our body is going to be totally off balance, like you mentioned. So, if we have good, fascial health, then we're able to have our feet more relaxed on the floor, more supple. So they're able to perceive the environment. And that's why I'm a huge fan of barefoot shoes as well,
Hmm.
or just being barefoot as much as possible. Because
Yeah.
if you are barefoot, you're allowing your feet to function as they should, and you're able to roll over your toes rather than just stomping or just stepping the foot using the hip flexor, when in reality we should be, rolling over the foot. Would you agree?
Well, it depends on what we're doing. Because like if we're
Yeah,
sprinting, I'm mostly on my toes.
right.
um because I don't want to heel strike,
Of
you
course.
know what I mean? Like I'm
Of
I'm
course. Yeah.
way more into using. It's fun when we start to get into like optimizing athletes because it's different. If you're dealing with a 50-year-old that's trying to rehab issues, it's very different than when you're
Yeah.
dealing with a 25-year-old trying to like run faster. But when I'm dealing with the 25-year-old who wants to run faster, the
Yeah.
plantar fascia connects to this little ankle bone here,
Yeah.
right? And it goes
Yeah.
center line down the foot, separates it into the phalanges. And like when we're running, right, or jumping, the more we can stay on our toes, the
Yeah.
more that this band stays taut, and it gives
Yeah.
us the ability to spring off of it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it kind
Recoil.
of it just depends on what we're doing, I guess, with our feet. But if I'm standing at a grocery store, what I always tell people to do
Uh-huh.
is if you close your eyes and you pretend like you're going to jump 1 inch, what happens is your body will reorganize its weight and it will
Yes.
pull the weight to the center line of the foot and then push slightly forward.
Yes.
That is where we want to stand from. That's when everything
Mhm.
is kind of engaged
Yeah.
properly. If we're just kind of like loose and like leaning on one hip, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're rolling on the outside of that foot. Like we're not really
Yeah.
doing our structure surface, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. And that's one thing that I see with hypermobility as well, is that when people stretch all the time and then or they are doing yoga, for example, and they are overstretching and they become hypermobile, or then there's the other end, which is functional patterns, right? But like, when you do yoga, for example, you're basically or if you're doing excessively yoga and you're doing it on a daily basis, you do a lot of passive stretching, you're making your body like flaccid, like super hypermobile. And then this is creating too much laxity in the system. And then that means that we have basically an energy leakage when we want to do something explosive. Like now the fascia is not nice and tight, or it doesn't have the perfect amount of tension, like you mentioned about the tuning, like an
Mm-hmm.
instrument, it doesn't have the right tuning now, so it's not ready to be able to do something explosive. So I tell people to try and avoid stretching as much as they can and try and do mobility or activations or dynamic mobility or stretching, where you are not holding passively, unless you do it like sometimes here and there, it's okay. But for the most part, you want to be doing strength training through full range of motion, or you want to be doing dynamic mobility because you want to be able to not distort or change that tuning in your fascial system. Do you think that's a good approach?
Yeah, hypermobile people I think are the most difficult to work with because
Yeah.
what I notice is that like something will trigger it. Like they'll be fine, 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 and then they have some sort of traumatic response, and then it's like their body's gone into this like way of. I notice with my hypermobile patients, we got to treat the breath first.
mm
So
mm.
their breath
Interesting.
rate is out of control and
So the
shallow.
nervous system state, then maybe their nervous system state is causing their body to be more hypermobile, and then the heart brain coherence is bringing their body back into the right amount of tension. Is that what you're?
I don't know. Like I'm not hypermobile, so and I probably have at least 20 clients that are.
Yeah.
Half of them really needed the training. Like they were hypermobile in their joints, but their fascia was holding a ton of tension. Then the
mm
other half,
mm.
their breath rate was out of control and they couldn't really feel the fascia. So as I was guiding them through the process,
Yeah.
they just they weren't like aware of what
Yeah.
like to them they were like, I don't know,
Yeah.
it doesn't feel like there's
Yeah.
tension.
Yeah.
Um so when we went back to the breath and slowed their breath rate down, then they could
Yeah.
feel
Uh,
tension. I feel like
uh,
hypermobile people are, to me, like they're a little tricky to work with because I think some of them have it from what you're saying, like from like stretching and stretching and stretching. And then some of
yes.
them,
Yes.
I think their nervous system it has been locked into
Yeah.
a state of stress for so
mm
long that their body created an overdrive of a
So they're
lack
like in
state because
dorsal state, like in a shutdown state. Do you think?
I some of them for sure,
Yeah.
because I think that almost like if you held your body in a chronic state of
Yeah.
tension for
Yeah.
5 years, at some point the body gave up.
Yeah.
And in which so I've had success treating them with the breath, getting their
Yeah.
breath under control, and then we
Yeah.
go back into the fascia and then they can
Yes.
feel.
Yes.
But hypermobile people to me, I've been wondering if like I don't do a lot of fascia flossing because there's like there's a sequence that they have with creating restriction and then release.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a different way of opening the body into a state of relaxation. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
huge on it because it doesn't treat the structure as a whole, but I've always wondered if hypermobile people, if I taught them fascia flossing,
Yeah.
what their like based on what you were saying, it's like, huh, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
fascia flossing, it would be interesting to take 10 of them and say, okay, like let's try it this way, let's see what happens. Because that's
Absolutely.
more of a restriction.
Yes.
Even like with the times that they use the wrap there, it creates restriction for their nervous system to kind of get more information. So
Yes.
hypermobile people, I'm always having a longer conversation before they start. Like, when did it
Yeah.
start? Have you always been this way? Like, what
Mm.
was the trigger? How is
Yeah.
your breath rate?
Oh yeah,
Um,
exactly. Exactly. You can always tell as well, like when someone is hypermobile. I've worked with many people over the years. I can tell from the street without even knowing someone if they're hypermobile, because I can just look at their structure and their body, and you can just tell if the limbs are just super, just hanging down. They're just hanging there, or they look very floppy in their movements. I know that their body is just like hypermobile, because it just seems that there is no tension in the muscle. And it's like what you just said, that their body was so long in a sympathetically driven state that they've reached the point of burnout. And now it's gone into a point of shut down their body, but they're just surviving. They're just going every day, one after another, just drinking coffee, trying to survive. maybe they have some issues, going on with energy levels, and they're just trying to do their best to survive, but they've never done things to try and recover their nervous system state to come out of that so that their muscles as well can, because they also want to do something to exercise, but they feel that they don't have the energy to do that
Right.
because they're leaking so much energy, not only from the inefficiency of movement, but also the fact that their nervous system is stuck in this state as well.
It's funny to think of electricity, isn't it? Like if the
Yeah.
muscles are like little batteries, like try this on. Like it's been cool for me to like think of the muscles as batteries and the fascia as this electrical conduit. And it's like so we
Yes.
want the electrical conduit to be fully active at the feet, right?
Yes.
But the muscles, if the muscles are strong, we're gonna have more ability. So it's like we want both. To me, I've done so much different training now that gymnastics is like my favorite thing I've found. And thankfully there's an amazing coach where I am, but wow, calisthenics training where there's no weight, you're coordinating your breath. It's funny in gymnastics how hard it is to listen to music because you're so in your
Yes.
breath, in your
Yes.
body and in the
Yeah.
nuance of compression stuff.
Yeah.
Um, it's been great for my athlete, but I, like you said, how you can see hypermobile people. I'm always looking at people's ankles.
Mhm.
Like when I am, like let's just say if I go out and play golf, I still play a bit of competitive golf. I will watch how the person swings and I will watch what they do with their feet. And I basically grade athletes by how much they can stay in contact with the earth through emotion. Because, like, when you look at Kung Fu masters versus like Kung Fu wannabe masters, like high level still, but like not quite a master, their foot position to me says everything.
Mhm.
It's like the
Mhm.
masters have so much ankle mobility and toe dexterity that they never lose their balance. So they
Mhm.
can effortlessly recover and create like power from positions. Whereas, so in golf, like I'm all flat footed, which is very rare in golf. Most people are basically disconnected from the earth at impact because they're generating power through their hips. And I generate power through my feet. And it gives me
So
like
you mean
way,
you mean like when you turn, like you mean you when you pivot your back foot, you mean you keep it on the ground, or what do you mean that you stay in contact?
so through like through impact, I can just hit golf shots off of one leg like this.
Right.
You know what I
Uh-huh.
mean? So I can
Without
just,
move without lifting
yeah,
anything.
yeah. So like I rotate the ball, like the weight of
Yeah.
my body
Hmm.
from the front side of this foot to the back side of this foot
Hmm.
with keeping my knee basically stable. So I
Hmm.
can just rip shots here with so much versus most people are like this. Like
Oh, I
literally
see. I see what
that,
you mean. Okay.
yeah, is
Yeah.
the normal motion through impact, whereas
Right.
I'm here.
Yeah.
There's so much more stability. So like you were saying, you can see a hypermobile person from like a
Yes.
distance. I
Yes.
like
No,
look
that
at,
that's fantastic.
yeah, it's my little cheat code.
No, the feet tell a lot about a person's function as well. Another thing which I notice on people when they walk as well, I observe like other feet, like duck feet, like going out like this, or are
Yep.
they straight? And one thing I always educate my clients about is that one of the first things I say is that get yourself a pair of barefoot shoes, number one, and second, like really watch and observe the way that you're walking and doing things, because this is going to change the way that you train as well and your performance in the gym and outside of the gym, and also your knee issues and your hip issues, because as you said, like the feet are the foundation that everything
Yeah.
else is built upon. And if the feet are out like this, the knees are more likely to vulgate, fall inwards, which is going to cause pain on the inside of the knee. It's going to cause issues with the hips and then with the lower back, and it's basically going to impact the entire chain. So if we don't have, healthy feet and also an awareness of our feet, I mean, I don't know. Is there something, any tips that you have for people who have feet looking like this? Do you have any good tips?
I do actually, because I have my right foot when I was born, my
Uh-huh.
right foot was like this, so I had to wear shoes.
Like
So
inwards.
anybody, yeah, inwards. But
Okay.
anybody that's doing this, right? Like they have this as their natural, we're gonna end up putting our weight on the outsides, like you're saying, which is gonna create a lot of issues. So in order to learn how to walk this way, that practice of pretending like we're gonna jump that 1 inch, You
Right.
know, so for them, if they're standing in line at public, at like a grocery store or at the bank, right? If we can get them into the mindset of pretend like you're gonna jump for that little inch. It's fun. I was watching my like my a nephew of mine, he's like 3, and he was running around the pool during holidays like a little Indian, like like on the tops of his toes. And I was like, that is just a great exercise, like like to
Yeah.
just, he was like making loud noises and he was jumping around and he was on the front of his feet. And it's like the more we can get on our toes, um the better, because people who waddle, they tend to put the weight on the outsides of their feet, and then this creates pressure along the outside so of their leg. So doing
Yeah.
lateral lunges actually to train that hip muscles to pull in correctly. So anytime we're working laterally, we're retraining the hips, because the
Hmm.
hip muscles might be like a little lazy on the front end. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So training the hips to operate laterally,
Yeah.
and then training the toes to become more engaged.
Right.
So not just like calf raises, but actually like isolating a marble
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
picking up a marble with your toes,
Hmm.
and then, you know, moving your hip around in different ways, and then dropping the marble so that your toes are engaged in
Hmm.
the walking. Most people that are walking like this, their toes are literally like they're not even part of the
Yeah.
walking. They're just kind of using the outside of the foot. So
Yes.
anytime
Yes.
we can get them to engage the toes and
Yes.
then strengthen the lateral, I feel like
Yes.
that's the right direction.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I always tend to think of the muscles a bit like, the actors that are pulling on the connective tissue, right? Because the tension in your muscles is going to determine a lot about the positioning of your joints, because the joints just sit there, right? They don't do anything without the muscles. And then obviously the nervous system is determining the state of the muscle tension. And so if we have very how do you say, lacking in strength inner thighs, or weak inner thighs, or they're too tight, that's also going to influence our foot positioning. The same as our glutes. If our glutes are too tight, our feet are more likely going to splay outwards. But if our glutes are nice and relaxed, it's easier for us to have our feet straight or even turned a little inwards.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. The lateral band is a band that goes up the outside of the leg from the foot, and then it
Yeah,
goes up from the knee to the hip, right? And then through the intercostals. And
yeah,
as you're talking, it's like, yeah, people who waddle probably have a really tight lateral band.
yeah,
And the
yeah.
hip joints, the funny thing about working with the fascia is, like, you're right, the joints are just a consequence of what's happening in the muscle until we talk about the fascia. Because
Mm,
if the joint has been stagnant
mhm,
in certain aspects, like our hip joint, for
mm,
instance, like most people don't do splits and straddles. So, like, that upper part of the joint is usually pretty stagnant.
mm,
And most people don't even know how to access stretching it, because everything is so tight on the underside. So, working with the fascia flow, you can actually attack the hip joint from different areas to create small compress, like to help release and open up that flow without like an extreme pull or stretch.
mhm.
You know what I mean?
Got
The
it.
soft
Got
tissue
it.
around the joints is still needs to be loved and nurtured, even if people can't do splits and straddles. You know what I mean? Like, because we need flow in there.
Absolutely, absolutely. So maybe could you give us a bit of a brief explanation without revealing what's actually in your fascial flow course, but like what does it actually entail? Is it like self-manipulation techniques? Is it more like movements that you're doing? Like
Oh,
what does it actually look like so people can
yeah.
kind of get an idea?
I forget that, like, I don't talk about this part a lot. So in my course, it's 4 hours of information, and I broke it into like little modulars for people so it's not overwhelming. And the first 30 minutes are all about, this is the fascia, this is what it's doing, and then this is how we're going to heal it. This is what creates the problem. This is what a problem actually looks like, a fascia adhesion. This is what we're going to do to fix it. This is how it compares to other ways that you could fix it as well. And
Hmm.
then there's a 20-minute lower leg sequence, and then a 35-minute upper leg sequence, and then there's a deep fascia and glute sequence. And what I tell people to do is only train 5 days a week. No matter what you do, max it out 5 days a week. If you work it 7 days a week, you're going to hurt yourself,
Right.
because the body has to retune. Even though
Yeah.
it's subtle and it's simple and it's
Yeah.
gentle, there's a lot happening inside
Yeah.
of the body. But
Okay.
all I do is we take a tennis ball and a
Yeah.
thick book. Like, you
Right.
don't need any expensive props. And I show you how to use this in a sequence that follows 8 rules. And once you memorize the sequence, it's kind of simple because we're doing the same thing over and over in different segments. But we take this and we roll through the body following the 8 rules, and we create a conversation within yourself about what's happening in that section. So
Mm.
as we warm up a section, our brain is mapping out where tension is. And then we
Mm.
take this tension and we're going to grade it. And so there's high priority and low priority. High
Mm.
priorities are spots that feel electrical, spots that radiate, spots that feel
Mm.
dull. Low
Mm.
priority, tender, achy spots. So it's like we
See.
create a conversation with the spider web of the fascia, so that when people do it, they're like, oh, I have a bajillion spots in this area. And it's like, okay, well, out of your bajillion spots, what's the highest priority? And when we can dialogue with ourselves this way, right, then we find these highest priority spots, and then we hunt, seek, and destroy them. And it's like a little art form. There's a little bit of conversation about how we steer this ball, which is replicating an elbow. Like,
Mm.
that's the only reason why we're using a ball, is because we're
Uh-huh.
creating a pressure point that can go
Right.
through the fascia bands, which are only 2 to 3 inches thick. So if we use
Uh-huh.
like a foam roller, or
Yeah.
like, this is another common one people will show me,
Yes.
something like
Yes.
this is cute in theory, but like, this isn't gonna get past this. So you're only going to be able to work the superficial
Right.
everything from there,
Even though,
because this is,
even if it's hard, even if it's hard.
it's, to me, everybody's body is hard until we're like 4 months in.
No,
Everybody's,
I mean the object that you're using,
oh,
like,
it's,
yeah,
yeah, so this is hard, but the thing is the surface area is too wide.
right.
So
Okay.
the first 6 months, right, what we're doing is we're trying to remove 80% of your lower body tension so that we can move on to the upper body. And a lot of people, they get the course and they're like, where's the upper body? I'm like, I will release it to you after you can pass my 5 question test. It's a very easy test, but you got to be honest. So most people, it takes about like 4, 5, 6 months to unlock the upper body, which is
Uh-huh.
perfect. Like,
Yeah.
that is on par. Like, if it takes 8 months, it takes 8 months. Like, we don't want to
Yeah.
rush it.
Yeah.
But if we use something like this, okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
we're only ever going to get to the first band, because underneath this band is layers of other bands. But this
Right.
ball has the ability, once this is softened,
Uh-huh.
to slip past and go to the other ones,
That's cool.
because it's smaller.
Hmm.
Does that make sense? So even
Yeah.
like a
No, I
soft,
totally get it. Yeah.
yeah. So it's like there's a lot of cool fascia release tools out there. And don't get me wrong, like, you can still stimulate lymph,
Yes.
you can still move blood
Yeah.
flow.
Yeah.
It's not like it's a bad tool. It's just not as, it's not going to get as
Specific.
deep.
Yeah.
It's not going to get to the
Yeah.
bone, which is what we're
Yeah.
looking to release.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, no, that's a fantastic explanation, and thank you for breaking that down because that helps people understand and visualize what they would be getting into if they, because if they have, I have read your website, but maybe I didn't read it like enough to read the details, so then people can understand like, okay, this is what you're actually going to be doing, like something like this.
Yeah.
It's not that you're going to be doing some kind of hands-on massage, but you're going to be using some tools and you're going to be doing something like this and you're going to be working with your body. So it's sort of like a little bit like foam rolling, but more with a ball
It's
in a
kind
way.
of like foam rolling with a ball with an added sequence, and it's deeply relaxing. Like, really, the
Right.
majority of what we're doing is
Intention.
relaxing and being still. Like, I tell people, when we're in a hold, your job is to be still and to be quiet and to remain aware of what's going on within the body. Because
Right.
as the tissues soften, as this hyaluronic acid is being prompted to be made, things change, and then that ball will slip into your tissues deeper, and then you have to steer that ball into the tension.
Right.
So when people learn it, it becomes theirs, which I love. So I charge as much as one massage to learn this technique that you can have forever. And I filmed it with my mom next to me, and my mom simulated like an older person that couldn't hold themselves up on their wrist. So I show people how to do it. If you can't hold yourself up, you got a rotator cuff injury or
Yeah.
something, you can't do the warm up, you
Yeah.
can replace it with like a cheap $40 massage gun. And then my mom in that whole course shows we shot it in 4K. I'm so proud of it. It's like a really beautiful course.
Uh-huh.
um but she shows you what to do if you are like, an older person or you have an injury and you can't get into
Uh-huh.
the certain posture. So there's like a
Yeah.
modification available for each of the things.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's really great to hear. Yeah, I love to use my massage gun every single day. I do that. I work my lymphatic points. I'm sure you're aware of Dr. Perry Nicholson, Stop Chasing Pain.
Yeah, I love what he's
Yeah,
doing too.
he-
He's really
he's
championing, he's getting people into it. He's like, come on, guys, you
he's
got to
so
learn lymph.
awesome. He's so awesome. Yeah, I interviewed him. He was number 7 or episode 7 on the
Good for
Fitness
you,
Wisdom
man.
podcast. Yeah, yeah, yeah. He's really, really awesome, and he's been a true inspiration to me, like for many, many years. Because my partner Tina, she had some autoimmune type of struggles, and she had many symptoms that gave her like swelling in her knees, which was like issues with her lymphatics. I'm sure that she had some issues with her fascia as well, which were
Yeah.
all interrelated, which we were not aware of. And then that's how I found his work around 6, 7 years ago. And then yeah, and I've been following him ever since, and we've been communicating on Instagram. And finally now, maybe 2 months ago, when I started my podcast, yeah, I asked him if he wanted to come on, and he's just super inspiring. He's an awesome guy.
Yeah. It's have you noticed like I can't believe how much I'm noticing now that I'm like doing a lot more lymphatic, how much
Yeah,
swelling I get around my eyes in the morning.
yeah,
And then like once I drain it like goes all the way and I'm telling people it's like,
exactly.
man, if you're
Yeah,
puffy in the morning, just rip
yeah,
through a good lymphatic,
yeah,
or do a breath. Like to me, I love the breath because the
yeah,
breath is what
yes,
moves the lymph better than anything. But it's like for people
yes,
not doing the breath, it's like, man, drain it out.
yes, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. Because what Dr. Perry teaches is that when you drain, well, because he teaches that drainage precedes supply. So what's super important is to drain the lymphatics before you do anything else, because then if that's moving, then if you add the breath after the lymph drainage, you will assist the fluid to move even better and to drain even better. But if they are clogged, if your lymph
Yeah,
nodes are clogged and you do breath work, it could sometimes create more pressure,
more
which
tension.
is not releasing from, yeah,
Yeah,
more tension from a specific point, which you may have a blockage. So it's always a great idea for people to do the big 6, which is, here over your collarbone,
hmm,
behind your ears, under your armpits, on your sternum here, or over your whole belly, inner thighs, and back of the knees. And that's Dr. Perry's big 6. And just by simply rubbing here with your hands, or I like to use a massage gun, and I do it every single day, every morning and every evening. And afterwards I feel amazing. So I
good.
I swear by it. It's
Yeah,
incredible.
I like that. Thanks for your reminder. I haven't tried it with a massage gun. Definitely gonna have that experience
You
though.
have to be very careful though that you don't
Yeah,
press. You have to just
yeah.
just basically touch it so it vibrates. The areas of your skin. I don't like to stay on one spot, so I like to move like left and right instead of just
Mm,
staying right here at the bottom of the sternocleidomastoid. I like to go left and right. And once I get
okay.
to the back of the ear, I like to just go like this, like the shape of the jaw
Nice.
with the gun. And
Hmm.
then afterwards, I also like to do the sides here where the ears are. And then
Yeah.
I like to do the base of the skull behind as well. And then after I've done those, because those are added points which I've added by myself on top of the
Yeah.
big 6, because I always feel like it's amazing to release tension here at the back of the base of the skull as well, because it helps to release the tension here as well. And then, following the whole sequence with the gun is just truly incredible, because you get such a vibration of the tissues that you're not only influencing, the lymphatic system, but you're also shaking everything. It's
Yeah.
especially when you do the belly area. I love it for the digestion and the gut motility and all this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I love
Do
it.
you, do you want to? What are your favorite tips or best practices to take care of your fascia beyond your fascial course? You already mentioned a few, like in
Yeah.
this awesome podcast episode that we talked about, but like I know that there are things such as like nature and all this. This is super important,
Mm.
right?
Yeah. So the fascia is responsible for our electronic uptake, right? So the more flowing and open our fascia is, the better we are going to use the electricity that we have. But there are a few things that we can do to help supercharge the electrons that we have within our body. And that's A, never missing a day of grounding, 20 minutes a day on a conductive surface. And
Mm,
that's not just our feet. Like it could be our spine against a tree. It could be
mm,
our whole body laid out on a bed of grass.
mm,
But 20 minutes a day of taking in electrons with like nothing but cotton between us and the earth is a really good thing. Um,
mm.
I love recommending sweating to people, people that are doing my training a lot. I'm just like, listen, 2 days a week, you have to get a real good sweat. And you can be passive. Like people, if they're not working out hard enough to get a good deep sweat, it's like go to the sauna, go to a steam room, go take a hot
Right.
bath, go trap yourself in a hot car for a while. But twice a week, we should
Yeah,
have a substantial flow of fluids all the way
yeah,
through our body where that spot, your whole spine is sweaty.
yeah,
That's really essential to keep moving the fluids within.
mm,
Um, Hydration, huge one for our fascia. If we are dehydrated working out, you're going to rip your fascia. That's the way it is. So,
mm,
hydrating with, I always recommend spring water that has, you tell it that you love it. At the minimum, tell the whatever water you're drinking, tell it that you love it. We structure water because we are electrical. We influence the structure of it. Now, water, when it's been held in one spot, stagnant for an like extraordinary period of time, the lattice structure within the molecules can kind of break down, and we drink water and we feel like we're still dehydrated, like we're
yeah,
not taking in
yeah,
that water.
mhm,
So I've there's so much to say about water. I'm currently like sampling one of Nuno Nimene's hydrogen bottles.
yeah,
It's been interesting. The water conversation for me never stops, but I feel like the saying you love water, that you're grateful for water, that you are thankful for it, the word that we have in our mouth and in our mind when we're drinking water, to me is an essential ingredient of taking in health. We
100%.
are mostly water, and water holds structure and memory. So
Mhm,
I really feel like being conscious and intentional about our water is nice. So spring water
mm,
is, it's the pH is balanced by itself. The structure is normally pretty good. But if it's been sitting in a plastic container for like 2 years on a shelf at a grocery store, you want to make sure that you spin it around a little bit and tell it that you
yes,
love it. So just because it's
yeah,
spring water doesn't mean it's perfect.
yeah,
There's still, like, I've done experiments where I take water and I put it in glass bottles outside.
yeah.
And that's how we used to make holy water. Holy water in the
Uh,
old pagan days was
okay.
28 days of water exposed to sunlight and moonlight. And I
Oh,
gotta
really?
tell
Wow.
you, the water, like, it tastes different. If you make holy water, it tastes like
28
rainbows.
days, it doesn't evaporate?
Mm-mm. Well, not if you put a
No?
lid on it.
Right.
It would, certainly if you don't have a lid on it. Um,
Yeah, depends how hot it is, I guess, as well. Like, because like here in Cyprus where I live, it gets pretty hot. Like in the summer, like 40 to 45 degrees Celsius. I don't know how much that is in Fahrenheit, but very, very hot anyway. And even when you have the lid on, like the water seems to somehow escape from somewhere. It evaporates a little bit.
Interesting. Okay, so
Yeah,
maybe for you it'd be like water under an old tree,
yeah,
so that would get like less sunshine on it.
yeah,
But
yeah,
something to try. The water, it does taste different. I would say if you leave water outside for 3 days, so it has 3 days of sun and moonshine, you
yeah.
can you can taste the difference. It feels like it's charged, if that
Wow.
makes any sense.
Wow, yeah, that totally makes sense. I'm all about this energy stuff. Like I love it because I understand that we are electrical beings, and you have mentioned that as well many, many times. And we truly are, from every aspect of our existence. There's so much that we can't see, which is part of ourselves, like what you talked about, the biofield. And there is so many forces that are acting upon us, electromagnetically, that are influencing us right now in this very moment. And this is why, as well, like you said, that the words and the intentions that you have behind something and how you speak to your water is also not only affecting the water that you drink, but it's affecting the water inside of your body because we are primarily made up of water, right? And also, what do you think about sunlight or red light therapy for producing mitochondrial water? Is that beneficial for fascial health in any way?
I think sunshine is absolutely integral. I haven't experimented enough with red light therapy to speak on it. Like I know what
Mhm.
I've read about it.
Yeah,
Um, to me, it's like if you're my favorite experiment is try it and then let your body decide.
tell you.
So
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
it's like I tried Sheila G and then I
yeah,
tried five other Sheila G products
yeah,
and the one that I liked the most was the resin. Like I got the most out of like the pure resin
yeah.
form. I felt like my body craved that and the other stuff it was kind of too diluted. My
Right.
body wasn't into it.
Yeah.
So with red light therapy, I've tried some stuff that like I wasn't into and then I've tried some
Mm.
stuff where I'm like, wow, that actually felt really good.
Yeah.
So um what I do know is that I don't like cold plunging, and cold plunging is incredible for your fascia and your energy.
Yeah. Why do you not like it? Is it like you do you find that you're just very sensitive to the cold, or what's the?
So I'm 34 and I'm a woman. And what I've found when like with the cold plunge information is that it's
Yeah.
great for men. And for women that are premenopausal, it can actually like distort our hormones a little bit.
Yeah,
And I'm not like an
I
expert with,
totally get that. I get that.
yeah,
Yeah.
but then post menopause,
Yeah.
it's amazing for women.
Yeah.
So I feel like because I'm at that age where
Yeah.
everything is starting to kind of like change for me a little bit,
Uh-huh.
um, or start to amplify, I should say, the certain heavy duty things that I used to do that I don't feel like doing as much. Like I've definitely taken it easier with my sprints, and I've
Mm.
definitely taken it easier with like my I would say like my high cortisol training with like, sprinting on a fasted stomach and then doing
Yeah.
cold plunges is
Yeah.
just, it doesn't feel right. It
Yeah.
just doesn't, it
Yeah.
feels like it's not the thing for my body. So people can say so many things about certain supplements, blah, blah, blah. It's like,
Yes.
try
Yes.
it, see what your body says, because sometimes it's good for a pocket of time and then it's not good.
Oh yeah.
And so
Yeah.
being aware of how things are affecting us to me is
Yes.
way more important than like what the data always shows, you know?
Oh yeah, it's not even so much about the data, like I don't even care about the data because I go so much about the feeling, like you just said. Like
Yeah.
if I hear something that it works and I try it, and if I don't feel anything, I say screw it, right? Like, but there are some fundamental things though, like sunlight, for example, you may not feel all the incredible effects that it has on your body, but it's just inevitable, the impact that it has on our biology, and we have to get it on a daily. This is like some non-negotiable things.
Yes.
Or like grounding as well. You don't necessarily feel sometimes the power of the grounding, or some people who maybe may not be so in tune. I definitely feel grounded when I'm grounding, but it just depends on the individual, right? But when you understand that, that there are some fundamental processes that are occurring and our body's electric, and that we need to charge it like a battery every single day, and there are some specific things that charge the battery and other things that deplete the battery.
Right.
And if we don't take care of the depletion part, but we're only taking care of the charging part, we're still not going to be fully in vitality. So it's super important to be aware about all the stressors in our life, blocking the artificial blue light after sunset, like I'm doing right now, distancing ourselves from non-native electromagnetic fields. What are all these things doing to our mitochondria and our mitochondrial water, which is also dehydrating us on a
Hmm.
cellular level? So, what's that going to do to our fascial health, our breath, our nervous system? So, yeah, it's super important to do all the things that are beneficial for us, but it's equally as important to do all the things to remove all the things that are harmful to us as well.
I always like to remind people because we live in this world of like everything is being questioned and like our normal stuff has like brought us into a not healthy space and now we're like
Yeah,
re-educating ourselves and sharing notes.
yeah,
And I had like there's a big house that's next to me and they have polo athletes that like stay during season.
okay,
And some of these athletes have, I love athletes because they make up their own mind about what they're capable of, right?
right,
And I was telling one of them about like, oh, I like to keep my phone away from me because of the EMFs.
yeah,
And
yeah,
he's like a kid, a 22-year-old like jock, and he's just like, that phone's never gonna hurt me. I'm way stronger than that phone. And I was like, I love that. that that is the coolest mindset to have, that like
Attitude,
the
yeah.
EMFs ain't got shit on you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, the intention as well and the energy of what you believe about something is going to have a way bigger effect than what you think. If you believe that it's harmful for you, of course, it's going to be way more harmful to you if it's going to be close to you. But someone who, like you said, just that person believes that, oh, it can't touch me, it's going to probably not going to impact them as much because the placebo or the nocebo is a very real thing. Like if you believe something, it's going to happen, right? So
I think it's
it can
just, it's a nice thing to mention in these conversations, because sometimes us nerds, we can get so heady about the minutia of in between things that we
yeah,
create rules that overwhelm others.
yeah,
And it's like, really, there's nothing to be overwhelmed by, because we are alive. And from a state of being alive, we have infinite choice.
yeah,
And we are stronger. There's so many things. We're so much stronger than we even know. And I think that's what's so
yeah,
exciting about
yeah,
the fascia work, is like, wow,
yeah,
if we're fully online like we were as kids, like we all experienced as kids real near perfect health, and it's like that's just the state that I would love to carry with me forever. And it's like I, that's the mission I feel like you and I are on. And it's always good to note for people who are at whatever part of that journey within themselves, like we're stronger than anything. So red light therapy might be a kick now. In 2 years, we might turn around and be like, oh, this other light therapy is the shit. And it's like, if we're in the path, we're just going to have a good time exploring it. But if somebody is, partially on the path, it's like, just do the best that you can. Like, it's about, we're mightier than all of it. Like,
yeah.
we're bigger, we're stronger, we're faster than we used to be 100 years ago. And we're just en route to continue that progress forward. And we're the guinea pigs. Like, I'm so happy. Do you have like a huge red bomber unit there?
Yeah, yeah. Basically, no, no. Right now, I have many red light bulbs in the house, so this is
Okay.
not red light therapy. Like I
Okay.
have a red light therapy panels. I have a couple of them from EMR Tech. Like those are
Okay.
super powerful. Like you really feel the heat of those. And honestly, with those, I feel that my collagen and my how do you say, the hydration in the tissues. I honestly have noticed a massive difference in my wrinkles under my eyes. And not like I have many wrinkles,
Right.
but you start to get some as you age. I'm 29
Hmm.
years old now, and yeah, basically I started to feel like it's getting tighter my skin, and I
Beautiful.
start to feel like it's getting more soft. Now, I've never felt
Oh,
that with any other red light therapy panels apart from this one. So it's I can definitely say that they work for sure.
that's very cool. Thanks for like letting me know that. That's awesome. I was actually just talking to a friend of mine about buying one of her red light therapy machines, so it's cool to hear your take on it.
Yeah, I mean, red light therapy is super powerful because when you understand that the sun is more than 50% red and infrared light,
Mm.
that when you take the full spectrum of sunlight, 50% of it is red and infrared. So if you understand that the sun, why it's so beneficial for you, it's giving you those frequencies and the UV and the blue light, which are doing different things in the body, but the red and infrared is acting specifically on the mitochondria, and it's allowing our body to produce more cellular energy, ATP. So when we have more cellular energy, we have more cellular energy to detoxify, to have energy to like do all the cellular processes that are supposed to be occurring on a daily basis.
Hmm.
If those processes are not occurring, we're basically now, staying behind on the cleaning, on the regenerating, on the replacing the cells. And that's when mutations begin to happen, when problems and disease begins to manifest in the body. So it always starts on the energetic level, on the cellular level. And if we just we can't produce the energy, then this is where it begins. So that's why it's so important to do red light therapy every single day, or to get sunlight every single day, or both,
Right.
which
Yeah.
I like to do because I feel like red light therapy alone in isolation, you can do it without the consequences of getting burnt, for example, by being too long in the sun. But of course, if you want to spend time in the sun, you have to build what we call a solar callus, which is, your ability to stay out longer in the sun by getting out with the sunrise, being outside as much as you can, getting grounded and being connected with the day and night cycles so that your body is able to build this melanin sheet, which is going to be able to act like a natural sunscreen, but also harvest more cellular energy from
Hmm.
the sun itself as well.
Yeah. I'm in South Florida, which is like super close to Cuba and Jamaica, and
Uh-huh.
I've had um super long conversations with these women from Jamaica about sunburns. And I'm
Uh-huh.
talking about like, 70-year-old women that grew up on the island
Yeah.
and dark skinned. And I remember them telling me that you do not sunburn if you eat a lot of fruit. And if your blood
Really?
is acid, you sunburn. And so I was asking them, like, like, how did you derive this? Like, talk to me about this.
Uh-huh.
And she would say that when people would come to the island, that like part of her family that were from other parts of the world,
Yeah.
and they'd come to Jamaica, and she's like, they would burn for 3 days, and then as I would get fruit in their body and their blood would become more alkaline, they could handle more of the sunshine.
Wow.
And
Mm.
me and my old roommate, we did an experiment after we met her, this amazing woman,
Uh-huh.
and we did 2 weeks of only fruit. We were like experimenting with like some hardcore Arnold Ehret detoxing and Robert Morris grape diets and stuff, like for fun.
Uh-huh.
And we went outside. It was like me and these my two friends were all white, like we're just like pale white people. And but we had all been eating fruit for 2 weeks straight, and we went outside
Yeah.
to the beach where it's super like bright sun here,
Yeah.
and none of us burned. We were outside for like 12 hours that day, like as an
Wow.
experiment, like truly just to
That's
see, like,
amazing.
was she right? And
Uh-huh.
none of us burned, which made no
Did you
sense,
did
you
you get
know
nice and tanned though? Did you
yeah.
build a nice tan?
We did, but it wasn't like a lot. It was almost like our body didn't have anything to burn off with the sun. It was an interesting experiment, It was
That's
like,
super cool. Yeah, a lot of
mm-hmm.
people say that you should avoid processed seed oils because those oils are making up your cells because obviously our cell walls are made up of fats, and you don't want your cell walls to be made up of processed seed oils because they're more likely to go rancid. Or well, they're already rancid if
Yeah.
they're processed, but they're going to become oxidized even further with sunlight exposure, and then that causes burning. It's like almost like you are putting yourself in a fryer with oil,
Yeah.
and then you're going in the sun, and you're basically burning from the inside. But it makes total sense with what you're saying because I noticed the same thing. Whereas one summer I was more of a carnivore style diet. I
Hmm.
wasn't eating any fruits or vegetables, just purely meat,
Yeah.
right? I was testing out the carnivore diet, and I would get more pink on my skin, but my skin wouldn't tan as easily.
Huh.
When I started to consume fruits this summer with all the meat that I was consuming,
Hmm.
I tanned way more. So I definitely there is
Interesting.
something to what you're saying with the
Yeah.
fruits for sure. Maybe it's
Well,
the structured water.
I eat meat now too. Like I did like a handful of years of like hardcore vegan, like experimenting it. I
Mhm.
really felt like I was in a detox. I needed to clean some stuff out. And
Yeah,
now that I
yeah,
eat meat, I really love meat and fruit. Meat, fruit, and I'm an
yes.
Irish woman, so I love me some potatoes.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
I don't do much bread anymore, but I love me some potatoes.
yeah, and there's
Uh,
nothing wrong with that, especially when you eat seasonally. I think seasonally is really the most important thing to understand here because the nature is super intelligent and how it gives us certain foods at
mm,
certain times of the year to regulate our blood sugar levels. So if you think
mm,
about the highest glycemic index foods are in the summertime when it's the highest UV in
yeah.
the environment. So that means that we are meant to eat those foods out in the sun, and so that our body can know how to deal with those foods and to lower our blood glucose because of the
Can
sunlight.
I say something though? Like this has
Go ahead.
just been like sitting in my brain for so long.
Go ahead.
Is it's So Arnold Ehret built this equation a long time ago. It's vitality equals energy minus obstruction. And we eat food for energy, right?
Yes, yes,
But what if it's not the highest form of food? Like the more I get into grounding and sunshine, the more
exactly,
my fascia
exactly.
becomes
Yeah.
activated. It's like, do we even need as much as we thought we did? Because as our everything becomes more efficient and optimized, it makes sense that like we would get more value out of the food. And then if we keep increasing the value of the food, like so if we supplement, if we, take minerals alongside certain things, I just feel like my body's needing less and less, because I'm taking in energy from
Yeah.
sunshine and from
Yeah.
fresh flowers. And,
Yes.
I really feel like I want to guide people away from the food conversation
Yes.
more into
Yes.
the like, we eat food for energy,
Yeah.
and energy comes from all sorts of stuff. But if you do something that's stealing your energy all day
Mhm.
long
Yeah.
and you're not pulling that energy back into your body, you're going to need
Yeah.
food. to take in the
Yes,
energy.
exactly.
But it's like people are leaning on food to create energy in all of these different ways that we can take it in. Like fresh air has energy in it, sunshine has energy in it, the
Yeah,
ground has energy
exactly.
in it, movement has energy in it. Um,
Mm,
the light that you're in has energy in it, you know?
yeah, yeah, exactly. That's something that I've also educated everybody about, is that only 1/3 of your energy comes from food. You're supposed to
Mm,
harvest the other 2/3 from sunlight and the ground and all the other beautiful things that you just mentioned. And if you're not doing that, you're only getting 1/3 of your energy source.
yes.
So that means that if you're only getting 1/3, you're already in a deficit, right? So you're going to demand more food throughout the day to feel like you are getting the energy that your body needs to run. But the reason why you eat is to harvest photonic energy. Basically, the foods are getting the photons and you're eating light, basically, right? So the real reason why we're eating is to harvest electrons and light from the food, which is information about the environment. So really, what we want to do is go straight to the source and have everything together in combination. The seasonal eating with the outdoor living, the grounding and nature connection. And I guess this is where we're getting back to, right? Always going back to nature, reconnecting with nature and being with the loved ones, because having an environment which is healing and not robbing your energy is also very, very important. Well, Brooke, I don't want to like hold you any longer because we've had like a really long discussion and
It's been fun.
yeah, it's been a really fun conversation and I feel like we've dropped so much value for people today. So I really appreciate it. Please tell people where they can find you and connect with you and maybe work with you.
Absolutely. My name is Brooke, and my channel on Instagram is Musical Breathwork. My website is musicalbreathwork.com, and I teach people all over the world how to double their breath capacity and breathe mighty, as well as make their fascia flow. And I built 2 courses so that people can train without me whenever they want. I still offer lifetime value for my courses. I'm very proud of them because they give you the physiological deconstruction of what's actually happening, and then it breaks it into a little 10-minute sequence for the breath and a 20-minute sequence for the fascia, so that you can just strategically start to align yourself with these things that you want. I really believe that we are meant to experience gamma brainwaves. So, as much as I love exercising, as much as I want to feel fit, I believe that our brain is working suboptimally. And I absolutely believe that the breath and the fascia flowing is imperative to us in order to divide these hemispheres and make them work like a symphony. I think that we are losing electricity all over the place as humanity. And when we can
Yeah,
start to talk, we could share a vocabulary around what's making these systems pump, we can resonate our body into a brain frequency that we are barely touching. So I have so much hope in the world that like the right creative thinkers and inventors will use this information to blossom a whole new humanity in front of us, because all of the solutions that we need already exist. We just need to open our minds up to how to crossbreed them and put them together. So I am here for the mighty athletes that are ready to take responsibility for themselves. I'm here for the artists that know that they have something within them that needs to be birthed out through their body, that they're having a hard time accessing that power. And I'm here for the thought leaders that know that they have something in them that need to come forward. So these are the sequences and the tools that I'm bringing to the world. I hope everybody plays their part because we have the opportunity to be alive, and what a privilege.
thank you for sharing your message, Brooke. It's truly inspiring. I loved every second of it, and I feel that, this is going to be a game changer conversation for people. So thank you.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for taking the time, and like happy holidays to you. This was so fun to have set up like after Christmas. So it's been nice to look forward to. Thanks you.
Yeah, happy holidays to you as well. Did you have a great day yesterday?
Beautiful family down here, and they spoiled me rotten with a bunch of little trinkets and goodies that I can incorporate into my life. And
That's
it's a privilege.
lovely.
It's
That's
a
lovely.
privilege. Yeah.
That's amazing. This is the Fitness Wisdom Podcast.